Chapter 288. The Immortal Sovereign's will is the protection of the limitless immortal palace. Only the true geniuses of the limitless immortal palace have it. Jian Wufei comprehended the Mountain River Sword Dao at the Golden Core stage and condensed the Sword Dao will. She is indeed extraordinary. It is said that the number of disciples under the nascent soul stage in the limitless continent can be counted on one hand. Only the monstrous geniuses of the middle continent have it. Of course, this is only on the surface. The ones that spread out are those who have used the Immortal Sovereign's will. No one would say such things. Just like Jian Wufei, if it wasn't exposed, who would know that she had it? Maybe there are people in the Eastern continent who have it too. Chen Hao said slowly. When he mentioned the Eastern continent, Xia Yuyu's figure appeared in Chen Hao's mind. How do you know so much? Chen Shui looked at Chen Hao in surprise. It's a secret. Chen Hao's blood-stained lips curled up slightly. He used the word secret to dodge Chen Shui's question. He couldn't help it. Itoda knew all this and he couldn't say it out loud. Chen Shui pouted unhappily and didn't ask further. More than 10 minutes later, Chen Shui found a small but absolutely hidden cave on a mountain peak. With his powerful soul perception, he confirmed that there was no danger before leading Chen Hao in. It had to be said that Chen Hao's recovery ability was obviously several times stronger than the last time he was seriously injured. In just 2 hours of flight, although he had Chen Shui's help, the two of them were still chatting. But even so, the huge injuries on Chen Hao's body had recovered by about 30%. Under the effect of the pure medicine, the true yuan in his dantian had also recovered by 10%. We are flying towards the outer area. There shouldn't be any danger here. Hurry up and heal your injuries. I will guard you. Chen Shui put Chen Hao down and said. Chen Hao nodded. He didn't stand on ceremony and entered a state of cultivation. Chen Shui sat cross-legged at the entrance of the cave. Although Chen Shui didn't enter the life and death battle, the pressure that Yu Chengfeng gave her and the battle between Chen Hao and Jian Wufei gave her a lot of benefits. Once she completely digested it, Chen Shui was sure that her battle strength would increase by a lot. A day later, Chen Shui was meditating when she suddenly felt a familiar fluctuation in the surrounding space. It was familiar because she had experienced it before. But what surprised Chen Shui was that this fluctuation was far more powerful than what she had experienced before. At this instant, Chen Shui clearly felt that the energy of heaven and earth that she could originally easily absorb had actually been forcefully pulled away from her body at this moment, as if it had been sucked into a vacuum, causing her to be unable to absorb the slightest bit of it. Sovereigns, Chen Shui opened her eyes in surprise and stared at Chen Hao, who was sitting cross-legged not far away. Clearly, Chen Hao's cultivation had advanced once again. Half-stage. What is the concept of half-stage? Specifically, any half-stage cultivator has the necessary conditions to enter the original realm. As long as they are willing, they can trigger the heaven's punishment. It's just that no one dares to trigger the heaven's punishment. From the golden elixir realm onwards, any breakthrough in the next realm requires one to undergo the heaven's punishment. The strength of the heaven's punishment varies from person to person. The stronger the person, the more terrifying the heaven's punishment. No cultivator dares to trigger the heaven's punishment recklessly. Especially for normal cultivators, the heaven's punishment is a nightmare to them. Some people will only risk their lives when their lifespan is nearing its end. Even super geniuses like Chu Qingtian, Gu Xing, and Wu Ruochen don't dare to be careless. Of course, it's not that they are afraid that they can't overcome it. It's that they want to improve themselves more. The stronger the heaven's punishment is, the greater the danger, but the greater the rewards. This is because the heaven's punishment is a refinement of the body, soul, and mind. If one can successfully overcome it, there will be great benefits. Therefore, these super geniuses will only trigger the heaven's punishment when they can no longer improve themselves and when their minds are perfect and they have no inner demons. Though this slows down their cultivation speed, once they enter a higher realm, they will have more potential and more flexibility. Half-stage original realm. After a full 10 minutes, Chen Hao let out a long breath and slowly opened his eyes. His handsome face shone with a trace of excitement. Chen Hao could clearly feel that the golden elixir in his dantian was beating slightly. Like a baby's heart, it produced a trace of life. This was the sign of forming the original realm. As long as he triggers the heaven's punishment, he will successfully overcome it. He will break through to the original realm. The density of my Zhenyuan has increased by 40%. I didn't think that a half-step original realm cultivator would be so powerful. Chen Hao saw Chen Shui staring at him and smiled. He was certain that if he were to face Jian Wufei's last attack, Chen Hao would be able to easily take it. This is the absolute power brought by the increase in cultivation level. 40%? Are you sure? Chen Shui was shocked. Is it a lot? It seems a bit much. Chen Hao smiled proudly. Ito Ta was already roaring in Chen Hao's mind. What do you mean a bit much? When I reached the half-step nascent soul stage, it only increased by 25%. That was already very shocking. Half-step nascent soul realm was only at the golden core realm. But you increased it by 40%. If you enter the original realm, I really don't know how much you can improve. Chen Shui said speechlessly. You will know when the time comes. Speaking of which, I'm curious. Why are you in such a hurry to increase your cultivation level? With your talent, if you weren't in a hurry to increase your cultivation level, your early original realm strength wouldn't be so low. Secret. What caused Chen Hao to be speechless was that Chen Shui straightforwardly gave him a taste of his own medicine and shut Chen Hao's mouth. Should we continue or? Chen Shui calmed herself down and changed the topic. Let's wait a few more days. This battle allowed me to comprehend a lot of things, and I have just increased my cultivation level, so I need to digest it. Chen Hao said. If it was before entering the grotto heaven, he would definitely choose to go deeper. But now, Chen Hao's mentality has changed. Even in this once-in-a-century sky city, he can face it calmly. It has to be said that since stepping into the cultivation world, Chen Hao has been rushing forward, almost without any pause. It seems that the improvement is amazing, but now, Chen Hao understands that if this situation continues, it will not be a good thing. Tension and relaxation, the way of civil and martial arts. Such a simple truth is often the easiest to ignore. The so-called relaxation is not to abandon everything, but to stop and digest. Only in this way can you improve yourself from a deeper level, understand yourself, and surpass yourself. I also need a few days to digest it. I will go out for a while and be back in a while. Chen Shui said. You want to take a bath and change your clothes, right? Chen Hao naturally knew what Chen Shui was going to do. He smiled slightly and asked without hesitation. Why do you ask if you know? What I mean is, you don't have to go out. I will give you a surprise later. Chen Hao smiled slightly and said mysteriously. He took out the 5-element sword and swept his gaze across the cave. Then he started to attack continuously. Chi. With Chen Hao's sword light, the hard rocks flew out of the cave like tofu. After a while, the cave that was originally only 10 feet in radius became 100 feet in radius. Moreover, at the bottom, there were 2 independent small caves. If they were standing alone, it wouldn't be a big deal. However, Chen Hao had obviously turned these 2 small caves into baths that were 10 feet wide and 3 feet deep. What are you doing? Chen Shui was curious about what surprise Chen Hao would give her, but after seeing Chen Hao make this space, she asked puzzledly. Look carefully. Voila, following Chen Hao's voice, something that shocked Chen Shui happened. The clear, sparkling water that contained dense and pure spiritual qi of heaven and earth actually gushed out from Chen Hao's body. In an instant, one of the baths was filled to the brim. Spiritual spring. You. How can you take it out? In almost an instant, Chen Shui recognized what Chen Hao released. Secret. I also didn't expect to take it out, but the moment we came out, I took it out. Alright, this bathing pool is yours. It's enough for you to absorb for a few days. If it's not enough, just look for me. Chen Shui looked at Chen Hao in a daze as he walked out of the small cave. How is this possible? How did he do it? This time, Chen Shui was really stunned by the word secret from Chen Hao. One had to know that when she was cultivating in the grotto heaven, she had tried it. Once the spiritual spring was absorbed into the storage space, the spiritual qi in it would disappear completely, and there would be no difference between it and ordinary water. Moreover, she clearly remembered that Qianhao had also tried it before, and it also didn't work. But how did he get it out now? Other than the fact that it didn't contain the profound space attribute, it was exactly the same as the spiritual spring in the grotto heaven. How many secrets does he have? Chen Shui originally thought that she had enough secrets, but compared to Qianhao, it seemed to be far from enough. Chen Shui was both depressed and happy. After blocking the hole, she took off her blue dress that was stained with Qianhao's blood and jumped into the spirit spring. Although her true essence had long since cleaned up the stains on her body, her many years of habit still made Chen Shui gently scrub every inch of her smooth and sparkling skin. After taking off her veil, her skin was as white as snow, and she was devastatingly beautiful. Her beautiful eyes flickered, and no one knew what she was thinking. In short, after more than 10 minutes, she threw away the distracting thoughts in her mind and entered into a state of cultivation. After Qianhao pretended to be calm and entered another small cave, his face was filled with intense joy. Even he didn't expect that the mysterious existence in his mind would bring him such a pleasant surprise. Although he couldn't take away all the spiritual spring in the grotto heaven, if he released all of it, it would be enough to form a small lake with a diameter of 200 feet and a depth of 100 feet. How high was the value of this? Third update to fill in the gaps. There is no update tonight, everyone don't wait. I finished early today, the result of staying up late last night, so that I can play with my daughter tonight. I haven't played with her since I came back from Nanjing. Tomorrow, I will continue to work hard in Dark Mountain. Chapter 289. Qianhao's mind was immersed in the Heaven and Earth Ring. The Heaven and Earth Ring was originally a low-grade spiritual weapon, but when combined with the 5 spiritual swords, it surpassed high-grade spiritual weapons and was close to supreme-grade spiritual weapons. Unlike ordinary spiritual weapons, it also had a storage space, and as Qianhao's realm increased, the size of the storage space gradually increased. Until now, Qianhao had not completely merged with the Heaven and Earth Ring, but he was not far away. What a pity, what a pity! If the space of the Heaven and Earth Ring was big enough, it might be able to store all the spiritual spring in the grotto heaven. Qianhao had never felt that the space of the Heaven and Earth Ring was small, but now it was almost filled with spring water. He was sure that when he walked out of the grotto heaven, the mysterious existence had helped him fill it up. However, at this moment, he had stepped into the half-step nascent soul stage, so there was a little more space. 1 square foot contains the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, which is equivalent to a low-grade primordial crystal stone. My spiritual spring is 3 million cubic feet, which is equivalent to 3 million low-grade primordial crystal stones, which is 30,000 high-grade primordial crystal stones, and 3,000 supreme-grade primordial crystal stones. Cultivating the grotto heaven only gives me 100 supreme-grade primordial crystal stones. Qianhao's mind was immersed in the Heaven and Earth Ring, and he calculated in his heart. Master, the value of the spiritual spring can't be calculated like that. Although the spiritual spring has lost the space attribute, it still contains an ancient aura, and the energy in it is also extremely pure. If you sell it to an alchemist or a weapon refiner, the price will be several times higher. Moreover, Master, you must minor in alchemy and weapon refinement, and it will be better for you to use it. Ito Tai said. Of course, I will keep good things for my own use. Qianhao replied. Almost all cultivators would be involved in alchemy and weapon refinement. It was just a major and a minor. Weapon refinement was especially important. After reaching the primordial soul stage, almost everyone had to learn it. After all, it was very difficult to obtain a powerful spiritual weapon, and to let one's weapon exert the greatest power, one could only continuously modify it. Moreover, only one knew what one needed the most. A weapon refiner could refine a powerful spiritual weapon, but it was not necessarily the most suitable for one's own spiritual weapon. 4 true experts, their natal magic treasures were obtained through continuous refinement and refinement. His mind came out of the mysterious yellow ring. Chen Hao was actually reluctant to pour the spirit spring into the bath. Anyway, he had just been promoted to the half-step nascent soul stage and was already in the peak state. Therefore, he directly took off his blood-stained and torn clothes, and with a surge of his true essence, he removed the stains on his body. After changing into an ordinary robe, he went to the big hole and activated his energy to lay down layers of enchantments within a radius of 1,000 feet. After making sure that he would not disturb Chen Hao took out the 5-element sword, integrated his mind into it, and stabbed with the sword. After the battle with Jian Wufei, Chen Hao no longer had any trump cards to speak of. Now, what he needed to do was to truly integrate the inheritance of the 5 divine beasts into the Platinum Sky-Piercing Slash and completely turn the Platinum Sky-Piercing Slash into a true combo ultimate move. As long as he could achieve these 2 points, his combat strength would increase again. At the same time, he wanted to see if he could make a breakthrough in his sword Dao. Chen Hao had already awakened his sword intent, and his sword intent had already reached the first level of the sword Dao. Moreover, in the battle with Jian Wufei, facing the terrifying sword intent, Chen Hao could clearly feel that his sword intent was showing signs of a breakthrough. Once it reached the second level of the sword Dao, even if he did not comprehend the sword intent, his combat strength would increase by a lot. As for the sword intent, Chen Hao did not ask for it. This was because he did not cultivate the corresponding sword techniques, and his sword intent was not high enough, so it would be difficult for him to form the sword intent. Phew! Jian Wufei let out a long sigh and slowly opened her eyes in the small hole that seemed to be floating in the void. As expected of a celestial sovereign's intent. Just a strand of divine will can form such a powerful small hole. If it was a real person, how strong would it be? In just 2 days, without any healing elixirs, I have not only recovered to my peak state, but my sword intent has also reached the middle stage of the greater success stage. If I use the 5th level of the Mountain River sword technique now, I will definitely not suffer any backlash. Jian Wufei's eyes shone brightly, and her face was filled with confidence as she thought to herself. Chen Hao, don't let me find you. Otherwise, I will cut you into 1,000 pieces and destroy your body and soul. And that woman, they will all die. That's for I can only endure for now. Jian Wufei said coldly, and she already had a plan in mind. Sensing that the small hole was about to shatter, Jian Wufei slowly stood up, and the unwillingness in her heart grew. Her hatred for Chen Hao grew even stronger. After stepping out of the small hole, Jian Wufei appeared in Sky City again. The surrounding heaven and earth spiritual qi was extremely dense, and it was obvious that it was of a higher level than where she and Chen Hao were originally. Without any hesitation, Jian Wufei sent the message and crushed the sect's communication talisman. She had done the same thing as Yu Qingfeng. However, she didn't try to get the sect's disciples to kill Yu Qingfeng. This was because Jian Wufei knew that Yu Qingfeng was a super genius from the Coiling Dragon Valley, a rank 9 sect in the South Sea Islands. The Coiling Dragon Valley was a sect that was much stronger than the Sky River sect, and they had a unique position in the South Sea Islands. They definitely had more peak late nascent soul and half-step incarnation realm experts than the Sky River sect that Jian Wufei was in. Even if she said it, the sect's disciples wouldn't dare to provoke him. There was no need to waste energy. Unless she met Yu Qingfeng who was alone, she could only let him go for now. 10 days later. Qingfeng, there is still no news. We can't delay any longer. There are less than 2 months left in Sky City, and in 20 days, the core of the ancient city will open. We have to go, maybe we can meet them there. Deep in Sky City, on a mountain peak, a half-step incarnation realm youth with a powerful aura said calmly. This youth's face was like jade, and he wore a white robe that was spotless. Beside him stood 2 extremely beautiful women, one on his left and one on his right, and it was obvious that they had a close relationship. If the people of the South Sea Islands saw him, they would know who he was. This youth was the strongest sect in the South Sea Islands, the leader of the core disciples of the Coiling Dragon Valley, Yi Shanshui. His combat strength was unfathomable, and he had the bloodline of the ancient divine dragon. He was also the leader of the Coiling Dragon Valley disciples, and he was ranked first in the test. Even Yu Qingfeng didn't dare to say that he had absolute confidence in surpassing this person. Fortunately, Yi Shanshui was determined to travel the world with his beauty. Moreover, he was more than 10 years older than Yu Qingfeng, so there was no competitive relationship between them. Both of them were extremely lustful, and they were both top geniuses, so they had a good relationship. All right, that's all we can do for now, Yu Qingfeng said with a gloomy face. Under Yi Shanshui's orders, the disciples of the Coiling Dragon Valley who had entered the Sky City and the sects of Han Ji and the other geniuses had been searching for 10 days, but they had yet to find any news about Chen Hao, Chen Shui, or Jian Wufei. Are you going to follow us or do you want to go on your own? Yi Shanshui asked. I'll follow you, Yu Qingfeng said hesitantly. Huh, this isn't like you. Yu Qingfeng's expression was a bit ugly. Yu Qingfeng's expression was a bit ugly as he said, you didn't see how strong Chen Hao and Jian Wufei were. One can use his ultimate moves in succession and has the inheritances of the 5 mythological beasts. The other's sword intent has reached large success and she has mastered the 5th level of the Mountain River Sword Dao. I'm not their match right now unless I can awaken my bloodline to the 2nd level, but damn it. All right, your bloodline is much stronger than mine, so it's naturally hard for you to awaken it. Follow me, and if we meet them, I'll kill them for you. If you can't increase your strength, then you'll attract divine punishment when you leave Sky City. Yes. Yu Qingfeng nodded his head and replied. Hiss hiss hiss. Boom boom boom. 3 incomparably sharp sword lights shot out almost at the same time. In an instant, a mountain peak with a diameter of 300 feet was directly cut into 3 sections and collapsed with a loud bang. The incomparably sharp sword intent lasted for a few minutes before it slowly dissipated. 3 consecutive sword attacks? I can already easily do it. My sword intent has also broken through to the 2nd level of the Sword Dao, but the 5 divine beasts are still unable to merge naturally. It looks like it won't be done in a short period of time. Only by merging with the 5 divine beasts will it be possible. But even so, my battle strength has increased by quite a bit. Even if I meet a late nascent soul stage super genius, I have a 70% chance of winning. Peak late nascent soul stage and half incarnation stage, with the space element and the mental cultivation method to merge with everything in the world, I should have no problem staying alive. Chen Hao slowly put away his sword as he judged. Is it done? At this moment, Chen Shui, who was standing near Chen Hao, asked. Dressed in a blue dress, she stood tall and slender. At this moment, her aura had clearly improved. It's about time. If you meet Yu Qingfeng again, what are your chances of winning? Chen Hao asked as he sensed Chen Shui's aura. 100%. The premise is that he hasn't become stronger, Chen Shui said confidently. After nearly 10 days of digestion and absorption, Chen Shui's improvement was no less than Chen Hao's. Not only did she break through from the peak of the early nascent soul stage to the middle nascent soul stage, but her chaos sword technique had also improved and she had mastered the 6th level of the Tempest Thunder Tribulation. Moreover, she had also comprehended some of the solitary sword technique that Chen Hao had taught her. It had to be said that although the cultivation environment in Sky City had a lot to do with the two's monstrous speed of improvement, it was still much faster for other super geniuses. Not bad. Let's go then. Let's go straight to the depths. The ancient city area is about to open. With our strength, as long as we hide, we will have no problem staying alive. Chen Shui said. This. 5 days later, the two of them were meditating to recover and flying. Without stopping to rest, they advanced into the depths of Sky City. Along the way, they encountered many cultivators and flying beasts, but the two of them quietly avoided them. Firstly, it was not challenging. Secondly, there was not much time left before the core of the ancient city area opened, and they did not have time to waste. Thirdly, there were too many people who wanted to trouble them. Once they were exposed, they might attract countless experts. It could not be helped. Just the disciples of the Eastern continent alone would want to trample on Chen Hao, or even kill him. Moreover, Chen Hao had killed several top geniuses from the Southern Sea Islands and the Western continent. First update. Chapter 290. As Chen Hao and Chen Shui continued to go deeper, they encountered more and more cultivators. They saw countless small-scale battles, and most of them were people from different continents. However, these had nothing to do with the two of them. Both of them blended into everything in the world and drifted past like two gusts of wind. When the two of them were about to find a place to recover, Chen Shui suddenly seemed to have noticed something. "What did you notice?" Chen Hao asked. In these few days, Chen Hao was completely sure that Chen Shui, who had stepped into the intermediate nascent soul stage, was more than 30% stronger than him in terms of perception ability. Chen Hao's current perception ability limit of 500 miles was already very heaven-defying. Even compared to a super genius at the half-step incarnation stage, it was still slightly stronger. However, Chen Shui could easily sense the distance within a radius of 800 miles. 500 miles and 800 miles seemed to be only 300 miles apart, but if one were to draw a circle with oneself as the center, Chen Shui's perception area was more than twice of Chen Hao's. It seems like Duan Yufei and Xia Lanlan from the Ling Tian sect are fighting with someone. I can't sense it clearly. They're about 800 miles to our left, and they're rapidly approaching us. They seem to be closely followed by 4 auras. Chen Shui said. Although Chen Shui did not associate with Duan Yufei and Xia Lanlan, the two of them seemed to have a good relationship with Chen Hao. Moreover, Chen Shui was familiar with their auras. In Chen Shui's mind, Duan Yufei and Xia Lanlan were people who helped Chen Hao greatly. Since she sensed it, she said it out loud. "Let's go and take a look. Duan Yufei is not bad." As expected, just as Chen Shui expected, Chen Hao said without even thinking. Whoosh whoosh. Duan Yufei and Xia Lanlan both had moderate wounds on their bodies. It was obvious that they had experienced a dangerous battle. At this moment, the two of them were flying at full speed. Less than 10 miles behind them, there were 4 cultivators from the southern sea islands in hot pursuit. Moreover, the distance was getting closer and closer. It was obvious that they were faster than the two of them. These 4 people were the same as Duan Yufei and Xia Lanlan. They were all at the peak of the early nascent soul stage. Let's see where you can run to. The leading youth of the 4 actually condensed a pair of solid wings with his pure and vigorous true essence, causing his speed to suddenly soar. Duan Yufei and Xia Lanlan frowned when they sensed the other party's speed. After the two entered Sky City, they were the first to meet and train together. With their battle prowess, they basically wouldn't encounter any danger in the periphery. However, when the core area of the ancient city was about to open, they rushed to meet up with the disciples of the sect. They did not expect to find a 3,000-year-old immortal fruit tree on their way there. The immortal fruit spirit tree bloomed and bore fruit once every 100 years, bearing 1 fruit each time. Although it was not a spirit fruit that could increase one's cultivation base, its value was definitely higher than that of countless top-grade spirit herbs. This was because the immortal fruit was an extremely rare spiritual fruit that could increase one's lifespan. In the eyes of young geniuses like Chen Hao, increasing one's lifespan might not be a big deal. However, for some cultivators who had reached a bottleneck in their cultivation and were nearing the end of their lifespan, it could save their lives. Even though one immortal fruit could only increase one's lifespan by 3 years, once a cultivator broke through to the next realm, their lifespan would be extended. How high was its value? In the cultivation world, any spirit herb that could increase one's lifespan was basically priceless. Nobody would sell it. Occasionally, it would be auctioned for a sky-high price. It was impossible to estimate the exact price. However, now, not only was the immortal fruit spirit tree snatched away, but their lives were also in great danger. Although the two of them had already sent a message to the core disciples of the sect, distant water could not quench their present thirst. Seeing that there was no way to escape, the two of them knew that the only thing they could do was to risk their lives and pray that the sect's elites happened to be nearby. Swoosh swoosh. Duan Yufei and Xia Lanlan held hands tightly and looked at each other before they landed on a mountain peak. Each of them swallowed a few spirit pills and raised their aura to the limit. Ha! What a waste of my energy. You should have done this long ago. Don't expect anyone to come and save you. It'll take at least a few days to reach the core area of the ancient city. No matter how fast your sex elites are, it'll take at least 2 to 3 days, right? Moreover, they're willing to give up their training in the core area of the ancient city to save you? Pa. After seeing that the two of them were no longer running away, the young man in the lead put away his true origin wings and said confidently, "Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh, swoosh." After a while, the other 3 people also landed on the mountain peak. The 4 of them split into 4 directions and surrounded Duan Yufei and Xia Lanlan as if they were prey. "You've already gotten the spirit tree. Why do you have to kill all of us?" Duan Yufei said coldly, "If you want to kill us, at least 2 of you will have to die with us." "Die with us? Pa, are you kidding me? Do you think the 4 of us will fight you to the death? I'll torture you to death no matter what. We have all the time in the world. Since we've gotten the spirit tree, there's no need for us to go to the dangerous core area anymore. Isn't it still cultivation there?" "Pa," the strongest young man said disdainfully when he heard Duan Yufei's words. "Brotherly, this woman is not bad. Although she's not a peerless beauty, she's still a rare beauty. You have to take it easy for me. Don't be too ruthless. Let me have some fun with her." "Fuck, I want to have fun with her too," another young man said. "Are you kidding me? So you're all into this too? Motherfucker, I didn't expect the 3 of you to be so famous in our archipelago. Are women really that fun? Ha! Brotherly, we naturally wouldn't dare to mess around in our southern sea archipelago. But what are the disciples of the eastern continent afraid of? Women aren't just fun to play with. They have all kinds of fun. Only by experiencing it for yourself can you understand a thing or two. Of course, Brotherly is still a virgin. The 3 of us can have some fun with this chick. It won't be too late for Brotherly to try when we meet a beautiful virgin. Not only is the taste wonderful, it's also good for cultivation. Yin and yang blend, ha! Bastard! Duan Yufei was so angry that his hair stood on end. He clenched his teeth so hard that blood came out. His anger was like a volcanic eruption. Boom! His true origin, which contained monstrous anger, exploded. Duan Yufei was like a mad beast and attacked directly. Yufei. Xia Lanlan's face was pale. Death wasn't scary. With the person she loved by her side, she would live and die with him. What was there to fear? However, what Xia Lanlan didn't expect was that the 4 of them were actually such scumbags. Seeing Duan Yufei attack, Xia Lanlan, who originally wanted to self-detonate to avoid being humiliated, hesitated slightly and didn't do so. She fought first. Even if she died, she had to make the other party suffer a certain amount of damage. It wouldn't be too late to self-detonate at the last moment. Seeing the 2 of them angry, a trace of pride flashed in the depths of the 4 guys' eyes. This was exactly what they wanted. Duan Yufei and Xia Lanlan's realm and strength were on par with them. If they really wanted to kill them, they would have to face the 2's life and death counterattack. At that time, the 2 of them might really drag 1 or 2 of them down with them. But the 2 of them who had lost their minds were much simpler. Fight with them and consume their true origin. Be careful of that woman, she might drag us down with her to self-detonate. Ha! The leading youth transmitted his voice to the other 3. These 4 are quite sinister. In the void, Chen Hao and Chen Shui were like 2 cool breezes as they stared at Duan Yufei and Xia Lanlan, who had already fallen into a great battle below them. Chen Shui transmitted her voice to Chen Hao. A distance of several hundred miles was a matter of minutes for the 2 of them at their maximum speed. When Duan Yufei and Xia Lanlan landed on the mountain peak, the 2 of them had already arrived. It was just that they weren't in a hurry to attack. It's not that the 4 of them are sinister, it's that Duan Yufei and Xia Lanlan are too inexperienced. It's the same for you, Chen Hao said bluntly. How am I the same? No matter what kind of battle, you can't give up until the last moment. Now, it's obvious that they already have the determination to die. This kind of situation can indeed increase their battle strength, but it's easier for them to fall into a real death trap. Last time, in the Blackwind Ancient Cave, you were the same, just slightly better than them. The more dangerous it is, the calmer you have to be. It's really unnecessary for them to lose their minds because of a few words from the other party. Otherwise, with their strength, even if they die, they can drag the two of you down with them. Chen Shui pursed her lips but didn't say anything. It's time to attack. You don't have to show yourself. Wait for me for a moment. A few minutes later, Duan Yufei and Xia Lanlan were already in a life and death situation. Chen Hao knew that he couldn't drag it on any longer. Otherwise, if Xia Lanlan self-destructed, he wouldn't be able to save her. Psst. Chen Hao's aura appeared above Duan Yufei and Xia Lanlan out of thin air. Before anyone could react, he casually swung his sword 4 times. Chen Hao didn't use the platinum sky-splitting slash. He only used the flaw of the solitary sword technique to attack, raising his strength to 80% and containing the sword essence of the second heaven. Even so, the incomparably sharp sword intent instantly pressed down from all directions. For screams, accompanied by the sound of flesh being pierced, suddenly rang out. Just a moment ago, the 4 people who were in sight of victory all widened their eyes and stared at Chen Hao, who was standing in the void. However, the blood spurting out from between their eyebrows made them lose consciousness instantly. They didn't even taste the pain of death. Duan Yufei and Xia Lanlan, who weren't affected by Chen Hao's sword essence, also looked at the void with shock at this moment. Brother Duan, Miss Xia, I don't need your reward this time. I'll take their things. Chen Hao smiled and grabbed at the 4 corpses in the void. Immediately, their weapons and storage rings floated to Chen Hao. Be careful. Goodbye. While Duan Yufei and Xia Lanlan were still in shock, Chen Hao's figure turned into a flowing light and quickly left their sight. After a long time, Duan Yufei and Xia Lanlan woke up from their shocked state. They felt like they were dreaming after surviving a disaster. No matter what, they didn't expect that such a shocking reversal would happen when they were on the verge of death. Is this true? Xia Lanlan reached out to pinch Duan Yufei's face and said in disbelief. Chen Hao had only appeared for a few seconds, but the 4 experts who had forced them into a desperate situation had died just like that. We owe Brother Chen 2 lives again. Duan Yufei murmured, holding Xia Lanlan's hand, his eyes full of gratitude and joy after surviving a disaster. In his heart, he was even more shocked by Chen Hao's strength. It's 2 chapters today. I'll still write at night, but it'll be too late. In case everyone has to wait, I'll leave it to tomorrow. It'll be 4 chapters tomorrow. Chapter 291. In the blink of an eye, he killed 4 peak early-stage nascent soul super-geniuses with a casual wave of his sword. What kind of concept was that? If Chen Hao was at the half-step incarnation realm, it would be fine. But he was only at the golden core realm. When they first met, although Chen Hao's battle strength was astonishing, Duan Yufei was still confident that he could defeat Chen Hao. During this period of time, Duan Yufei and Xia Lanlan had both stepped into the nascent soul realm and reached the peak of early-stage nascent soul realm. Their battle strength had increased several times, and their speed of improvement was enough to be proud of. But when they saw Chen Hao's attack just now, they knew what a monster was. At this moment, whether it was Duan Yufei or Xia Lanlan, they were shocked beyond words. He really deserves Yu. Xia Lanlan murmured. Only Yu deserves him, right? Duan Yufei thought to himself. Although it was just a reversal of the order, the meaning was completely different from what Xia Lanlan had said. Obviously, in Duan Yufei's heart, Chen Hao was stronger and more worthy of respect. Xia Yu had a unique cultivation environment, but what about Chen Hao? He was just an ordinary youth from the secular world who had stepped into the cultivation world step by step through his own efforts, and he had only entered a 3rd-grade sect. Even if he had the full support of the star-picking sect, he couldn't be compared to Xia Yu. But in just a few months, his growth could only be described as monstrous. Although the 2 of them had suffered a lot of injuries, they weren't fatal. After swallowing healing elixirs, it only took them half a day to recover 80% of their battle strength. The 2 of them restrained their auras and flew to the core of the ancient city at their fastest speed. There wasn't much time left, so they had to speed up. What kind of spirit tree is this? Chen Hao and Chen Shui didn't fly for too long before they found a hidden cave and entered it. In Sky City, where danger could appear at any time, the 2 of them had to be cautious. Once their true essence and physical strength were exhausted to 40%, they would stop rushing. Otherwise, once they encountered danger, their battle strength would be greatly affected. After the two of them entered the cave, Chen Hao rummaged through the four people's storage rings. In the storage ring of the young man who led the group, he took out the spirit tree that they had mentioned during their conversation. When Chen Hao saw the spirit tree, he sensed the spirit tree's aura and asked in surprise, "Immortal fruit spirit tree?" When Chen Hao's eyes widened in surprise, Ito's voice also sounded in Chen Hao's mind. "Yes, it's the immortal fruit tree." After a while, Chen Shui said with great certainty. Chen Shui saw extremely detailed records of heaven and earth spiritual objects in the sect, which almost included all the spiritual medicines in the world. It was 100 times richer than what Chen Hao had seen in the sect's information. What's the use? It seems like the heaven and earth spirit chi here isn't very dense. Chen Hao asked as he stared at the immortal fruit tree, which was about 30 meters tall. When Chen Shui explained the magical use and value of the immortal fruit tree, Chen Hao was a little disappointed. However, it soon turned into excitement. It was useless to him, but its value was high. Quickly put it away. If you can, put it near the spirit spring. With the nourishment of the spirit spring, it will grow faster. Yes, after it blossoms and bears fruit, I'll give you the first fruit, Chen Hao said. Although Chen Shui did not contribute, the two of them had gone through the trial together. Therefore, they had to share what was needed. As he spoke, he put the immortal fruit tree into the mysterious yellow ring and placed it at the edge of the spirit spring. "I don't need anything that can increase my lifespan," Chen Shui said. "If you sell it, you'll get a lot of primal crystal stones. I don't lack them. You can keep them for yourself." "Sister Fu, you don't have to be polite with me." "I won't be polite," Chen Hao said with a smile. "I'm not rich. Sister, I'll accept it. As long as it's for my cultivation, my sect. My mother will provide it to me," Chen Shui said. She almost said the word, sect. Fortunately, she stopped in time. Although Chen Shui was certain that Chen Hao would not discover her secret, it was better to be cautious. Moreover, she had told Chen Hao that she was a rogue cultivator. "That's good. Quickly recover. Oh, right, if you have any information on spirit herbs, ores, and so on, give me a copy. Otherwise, I won't know if I come across any treasures in the future," Chen Hao said. "The information on the star-picking sect is a little shabby. I didn't bring it with me. I'll give it to you when we get out." "Okay." In the blink of an eye, another 7 days had passed. There was only 1 day left before the core ancient city area would open. At this moment, there were 1,000 people at the entrance of the core ancient city area. They were divided into 3 small areas and gathered within a 100-mile radius. There was a clear mark between this 100-mile radius and the surrounding space. It was as though a faint film of light was shrouded in it that shot up to the sky. It could be seen from tens of thousands of miles away. Obviously, this 100-mile radius was the only entrance to the core ancient city area after it opened. As time passed, people from the 3 forces were still arriving one after another. However, at this speed, there would definitely be less than 1,500 people by the time it opened. It should be known that a total of 3,000 people had stepped into Sky City. Where did the remaining half go? Obviously, there were only 2 results. They were either dead or too scared to come. Everyone knew that Sky City only had 3 months of training time. The first month was to test the results and strength of the disciples with similar combat strength and teleport them to the same area. In the second month, the entire Sky City, except for the core of the ancient city, would disappear. In the third month, the core of the ancient city would open, and it was also the most important month for Sky City. The core ancient city area was actually a huge space with a radius of 100,000 miles. It was also the real holy land for cultivation in Sky City. Not only was the spiritual energy of heaven and earth extremely rich, the entire space was filled with the mysterious aura of the heavenly Tao. It was very useful for cultivators to break through their own heavenly Tao. Moreover, in the huge space with a radius of 100,000 miles, there were some ancient palaces floating in the void. Whether one could enter it or not depended on one's opportunity, luck, and strength. Those with weak strength basically did not dare to try to enter the palaces. At most, they would choose a corner and secretly cultivate. Even so, they might face a fatal disaster. This was the battle of providence between the eastern and western continents and the southern sea archipelago. Who would be soft-hearted? Especially after killing people, they could obtain wealth. Many people wanted to do this. The area where the eastern mainland disciples were at was beyond the expectations of the southern sea archipelago and the western mainland disciples. This time, there were actually more than 350 people, which was dozens more than the western mainland. The southern sea archipelago had the most people with more than 400 people. In such a situation, nobody dared to act recklessly. Otherwise, both sides would suffer heavy casualties. Moreover, the ancient city area was about to open. Senior brother Zhao, don't tell me those fellows from the southern sea archipelago are guarding Lan Lan and junior brother Duan? At this moment, among the close to 20 Ling Tian sect disciples, a disciple at the peak of the mastery nascent soul stage asked the person beside him through voice transmission as he stared at the southern sea archipelago powerhouses who were wandering outside the light screen. This disciple was the Ling Tian sect's core disciple, Xia Xiaodao. He was also the direct descendant of the sect leader, Xia Lingfen. He was Xia Lanlan and Xia Yu's cousin. I don't think so. The four people who were chasing after junior sister Lanlan and junior brother Duan were killed by Chen Hao in an instant. Although junior brother Duan didn't say what treasure it was, since the four of them obtained the treasure and were confident of winning, it's impossible for them to tell the sect, said the disciple called senior brother Zhao. This person was the leader of the Ling Tian sect this time, Zhao Yuanqing. He was also second only to Xia Yuyu among the core disciples. The aura emitted from his body was obviously that he had advanced to the half-step incarnation stage. Although he was not as powerful as Chu Qingtian, Gu Xing, and Wu Ruochen, his combat strength was definitely in the top 10 among all the Eastern Mainland disciples. After he received Xia Lanlan and Duan Yufei's message, he went to their location without hesitation. However, he was too far away and could not make it in time. Fortunately, it did not take long before he received news from the two of them again. They said that the danger had been resolved and that they were saved by Chen Hao. Only then did he return the way he came with doubts. He was confused because he could not figure out how Chen Hao, who was only at the golden core stage before entering the sky, could save Duan Yufei and Xia Lanlan who were at the early nascent soul stage. It's good that he's not. Yi Shanshui is the #1 core disciple in the southern sea archipelago. His combat strength is unfathomable. If we're targeted by him, we'll be in trouble. Xia Xiaodao said, Lanlan and junior brother Duan should be here soon. Fuck, don't tell me they don't dare to come? Yu Qingfeng, who was wandering at the edge and carefully sensing every person who came over, said fiercely when he saw that the ancient city was about to open. Until now, Chen Hao and Chen Shui had yet to appear. Jian Wufei did appear, but unfortunately, even with Yi Shanshui around, he could not do anything to Jian Wufei for now. This was something he did not expect. Jian Wufei's sect, the Tianhe sect, was one of the rank 9 sects in the Western continent, but it was not the strongest sect. However, when Jian Wufei arrived, she was welcomed by the strongest cultivators of the rank 9 sects in the Western continent, including the strongest sect, the Sacred Light sect. What did this mean? If Jian Wufei wanted to fight, it would mean that the Western continent and the Southern Sea Islands were at war. This time, the Eastern continent, which seemed to be on the rise, would definitely take advantage of the situation. Therefore, even Yi Shanshui did not dare to make a move at this time. He could only place all his hopes on Chen Hao and Chen Shui. Yu Qingfeng knew that Chen Hao was only a disciple of a rank 3 sect. During this time, even though he did not find Chen Hao and Chen Shui, he had killed dozens of Eastern continent disciples. From their mouths, he knew that Chen Hao was indeed a disciple of a rank 3 sect, and Chen Shui was just a rogue cultivator. With Yi Shanshui's status, as long as he said that he only wanted to deal with Chen Hao and Chen Shui, the people of the Eastern continent would not stand up for him. After all, Chen Hao had killed the top geniuses of the 4 rank 9 sects in the Southern Sea Islands. Just as Yu Chengfeng was cursing, two figures came from afar. It was a man and a woman. First update. Chapter 292. They're all at the nascent soul stage, not them. Yi Shanshui had already spoken when Yu Chengfeng had yet to lock onto their auras. It was impossible to trigger the heavenly punishment in the Sky City. It was not a problem to go from the early stage to the intermediate stage, to the mastery stage, or even to the half-step nascent soul stage. It was an undeniable fact that Qin Hao was at the golden core stage. It was Duan Yufei and Xia Lanlan who had rushed over. Let's go in, okay? In the void hundreds of miles away, two faint gusts of wind drifted between heaven and earth. Following their conversation, they silently began to move towards the entrance of the ancient city. The two of them were Qin Hao and Qin Shui. The two of them had been here for a long time, but they did not enter. They had no choice. Their strength was inferior, so they could only temporarily avoid it. Yi Shanshui's aura was really powerful. Moreover, it was not just Yi Shanshui alone. Chen Hao and Qin Shui knew very well that they were not Jian Wufei. If they were to appear, no one in the eastern continent would help them except for the Ling Tian sect. With just the two of them, it was absolutely impossible for them to fight against Yu Chengfeng's group. Even if it was Yi Shanshui alone, the two of them would not be able to fight against him. The gap between a half-step nascent soul stage genius was too big. Therefore, they could only conceal their aura. Fortunately, the two of them had cultivated the heart technique to merge with everything in the world. Otherwise, they would not be able to enter the core of the ancient city. Hiss hiss, at the outermost area where the Southern Sea Archipelago disciples gathered, Qin Hao and Qin Shui quietly chose a corner far away from the crowd and entered the light screen without anyone noticing. The reason why they chose the Southern Sea Archipelago and not the Eastern continent was naturally because they had their own plans. Be careful with your senses. You don't have to sense those at the half-step nascent soul stage. After the two of them stopped, Qin Hao transmitted his voice to Qin Shui. I know, don't worry, Qin Shui said confidently. This was the only thing she was stronger than Qin Hao in. When Qin Shui began to sense, Qin Hao also carefully released a trace of undetectable soul fluctuation and began to sense the auras of the few sects in the Southern Sea Archipelago. Know yourself and know your enemy. After a period of observation, the two of them were clear about the experts they might face after entering the core of the ancient city. As long as Yu Chengfeng came into contact with someone, the two of them had to control their aura. They did not need to consider the half-step incarnation realm because even if they encountered one, they could only hide. However, he didn't let go of any nascent soul realm cultivators in the middle stage, late stage, or even the peak of the late stage. A super genius at the pinnacle of the nascent soul stage was not someone that the two of them could match up to. However, if they were to encounter one, they would still have a chance to launch a sneak attack. You want to kill us? Then you better pray that you stay away from us. Although they couldn't fight them head-on, their powerful perception and concealment skills made them natural killers. Being forced to hide the head and show the tail was a very stifling matter. Therefore, it was impossible for him to not get some interest back. What's more, this was a chance to make a fortune. In less than a few minutes, Chen Hao and Qin Shui had already grasped the breadth of all the targets. Soon after, the two of them silently arrived at the area where the Western mainland disciples were located. Junior sister Lanlan, junior brother Duan, you're finally here. What about Qin Hao? Is he not with you? When Xia Lanlan and Duan Yufei arrived among the Ling Tian sect disciples, everyone surrounded them. Zhao Yuanqing lowered his voice and asked. Nope. Senior brother Zhao, everyone, let's not talk about him first. We'll talk about it when we get back to the sect. Duan Yufei lowered his voice and said solemnly. After that, he hurriedly sent a voice transmission to Xia Lanlan. Lanlan, don't look around, oh. Xia Lanlan quickly retracted her gaze. What's going on? Zhao Yuanqing frowned slightly and asked through voice transmission. Many people in the Southern Sea Archipelago and the Western mainland want to deal with Chen Hao. Even we can't protect him, Duan Yufei said through voice transmission at that moment. Initially, Duan Yufei and Xia Lanlan did not know about this at all. However, when they were about 10,000 miles away from the core area, they found out. This was because Chen Hao had borrowed 2 pairs of communication talismans from him and Xia Lanlan. When they invited the 2 of them together, Chen Hao briefly explained the reason why he did not enter the entrance with them. However, at that moment, Duan Yufei and Xia Lanlan did not understand how Chen Hao could hide from their eyes. Fuck, it's about to open. Chen Hao, that brat, probably won't dare to come. Humph, with such a temperament, there's nothing to fear. When the light screen began to violently tremble, Yu Qingfeng and Jian Wufei, who was sitting in the crowd but still had their eyes locked on the outside, cursed out loud and thought disdainfully in their hearts. Jian Wufei, who had comprehended the will of the Sword Dao, had notified the people in the sect to search for Chen Hao. However, she did not request for the people in the sect to kill him. She would climb back up from where she fell. Only by defeating Chen Hao with her own strength and killing him would it be in line with her will of the Sword Dao. At the same time, Chu Qingtian of the eastern mainland's Yuan Gate and Gu He, who was second only to Gu Xing in the Floating Mist sect, frowned slightly. After entering the city in the sky, they had been looking for Chen Hao and Chen Shui. However, the 2 of them seemed to have disappeared. None of the disciples in the sect had seen them. Chu Qingtian, Gu He, and the others had guessed that the people Yu Qingfeng was waiting for were Chen Hao and Chen Shui. After all, with Yu Qingfeng's cultivation and aura, it was very likely that he was in the same region as Chen Hao and Chen Shui. However, they could not be sure. As such, they had been paying attention to Yu Qingfeng and the number 1 expert of the Southern Sea Islands, Yi Shanshui. At this moment, when Yu Qingfeng couldn't help but mention Chen Hao's name, they were finally certain of their guesses. Just as the mysterious aura of the light screen was getting thicker and thicker, a few exclamations suddenly sounded from a corner where the eastern mainland cultivators were, attracting everyone's attention. Isn't that Chen Hao and Chen Shui? Why did they suddenly appear? I thought something had happened to them. I didn't expect them to be here already. What powerful concealment skills. The few disciples that were closest to Chen Hao and Chen Shui discussed with surprised expressions. Chen Hao and Chen Shui looked at each other and revealed a faint smile. The 2 of them had expected to encounter such a situation when the light screen was activated. The miraculous teleportation light pillar was still too mysterious for them. It was absolutely impossible for them to maintain the state of merging with all things in the world. That's him. Brother Yi, Brother Han, that's Chen Hao. He's the one who killed Shangguan Yang, Han Ji, and the others. Yu Qingfeng's furious voice suddenly sounded before Chen Hao and Chen Shui's aura was released. What a beautiful woman. Yi Shanshui's eyes instantly locked on Chen Shui, who was in a blue dress. Although she was covered by a black veil, the translucent veil could not hide her beautiful little face. Killed Shangguan Yang, Han Ji, and the others? Yu Qingfeng's angry voice was transmitted into everyone's ears. All the disciples in the Southern Sea Islands who didn't know about it opened their eyes wide in shock. Who were Shangguan Yang and Han Ji? They were top geniuses who were similar to Yu Qingfeng. Almost in an instant, everyone thought of who the 2 words, waiting for someone, could be. Even the disciples from the Western continent and the Eastern continent were shocked when they heard the names of Shangguan Yang and Han Ji. Especially the disciples from the Eastern continent, they gasped in astonishment. Although they didn't know Shangguan Yang and Han Ji, they were super geniuses who ranked at the top of the test. Even such geniuses were killed by Chen Hao. What did that mean? Everyone from the 3 forces was surprised. However, before they could react, the dazzling light instantly enveloped everyone. Hiss. More than 1,000 cultivators disappeared at the same time in the violent spatial fluctuations. Phew, the transmission this time was beyond Chen Hao's expectation. Although he had no concept of time and seemed to have lost his consciousness, the moment he walked out of the transmission, Chen Hao clearly felt that the whole transmission process was definitely more than any of the previous ones. It was probably more than 10 minutes. After letting out a long breath, Chen Hao began to look at the surrounding space. There were continuous mountains, colorful clouds, dense forests, and all kinds of strange flowers and plants. In the distance, he seemed to vaguely see a mirage-like palace. The spiritual qi of heaven and earth in the entire space was purer and denser than outside. Moreover, the aura of demonic beasts was stronger too. What made Xianxia even happier was that the entire space contained a mysterious aura. No wonder it's the best place to cultivate in the Sky City. In a month, I might be able to improve my grasp of the law of heaven. Buzz. At this moment, the communication talisman that Xianxia borrowed from Duan Yufei and Xia Lanlan vibrated violently. With a smile, Xianxia crushed the communication talisman and received the information in it. Not only could the communication talisman transmit information, but it also had a magical positioning function. Of course, the value of this kind of communication talisman was much higher than that of ordinary communication talismans. The reason why Xianxia borrowed it was to meet up with Qin Shui. After all, in the transmission of the Sky City, even if they hugged each other, they would be separated. Xianxia and Qin Shui, who were nearly 10,000 miles apart, turned into gusts of wind after locking onto each other's direction and converged with each other at lightning speed. The ancient city area was only 100,000 miles in radius, and more than 1,000 people were scattered in it. In fact, it was just a drop in the ocean, but that was referring to ordinary people. For over 1,000 Golden Core Realm and Nascent Soul Realm cultivators, it was rather crowded. Especially for Xianxia and Qin Shui, who were besieged on all sides, they had to be extra careful. Everyone in the South Sea Archipelago, you should have seen Xianxia and Qin Shui. If you see either of them, inform me immediately. I, Xianxia, will not treat you unfairly. As the leader of the South Sea Archipelago, Xianxia did not need Qingfen's urging this time and directly used the group transmission talisman. Chapter 294. Xianxia's promiscuity was well known in the Southern Sea Archipelago. Up until now, he had ruined countless beautiful girls. He even had more than 10 Dao partners. Even when he came to the Sky City this time, he had 2 beautiful Dao partners with him. Compared to him, Yu Qingfeng was not on the same level at all. Xianxia was tempted the moment he saw Qin Shui. How could he let go of such a beautiful woman? The Western Mainland's Heavenly River sect and people related to Jian Wufei were also looking for Qianxia and Qin Shui. However, they were not as exaggerated as Xianxia. Of course, the Eastern Mainland's Chu Qingtian, Gu He, and the others were no exception. Buzz. Just when Xianxia was flying, the communication talisman vibrated again. This made Xianxia slightly puzzled. However, when he took out the communication talisman, he immediately understood. Duan Yufei had given him this communication talisman before he entered the Sky City. This should be a message for the Ling Tian sect disciples to gather. Xianxia hesitated slightly but did not break it in the end. Once he did, the leader of the Ling Tian sect would know his location. Of course, he would also know the leader's location. However, Xianxia did not know him at all. He did not even know what kind of person he was. To be safe, he did not open it. Of course, the most important thing was that Xianxia did not have the slightest intention of seeking shelter from the Ling Tian sect. Moreover, they could not protect him anyway. In less than an hour, Xianxia and Qin Shui, who were not far away, separated from each other. Otherwise, both of them would not be able to sense each other's presence. Soon, both of them locked onto each other's aura and gathered together. Let's go. We've been locked onto in such a short time. Let's leave this place quickly. Xianxia said immediately when he saw Qin Shui in a blue dress. Qin Shui nodded her head with a solemn expression. Her perception was more powerful than Xianxia's. She knew that she and Xianxia had only released their auras for a short while, but they were locked onto by 3 auras. Moreover, they were closing in on them at a shocking speed. It had to be said that there were too many people who wanted the 2 of them dead. In this space that was only 100,000 miles wide, there were probably hundreds of people who were their enemies. Moreover, there were many experts that the 2 of them could not fight against. Xianxia, this place is only 50,000 kilometers in radius. It's really too small, and we have too many enemies. Unless we meet someone who is alone and not that strong, we can't do anything at all. Rather than running around to avoid being hunted down, it's better to find a secluded place to cultivate. This place is undoubtedly the most suitable place for cultivation, Xianxia said. Indeed, our strength is still too weak. Increasing our strength is the key. It was estimated that all the disciples of the large sects were gathering here. They should also know that cultivating here was the most important thing. I believe that no one will come looking for us. Let's do that, Chen Hao responded. When Chen Hao entered this space, he already had this plan in mind. Although he would definitely be able to kill quite a few of those fellows, he would still be able to assassinate them. But other than being able to obtain some things, there was not much practical use. Rather than wasting time on such meaningless battles, it was better to use this precious 1 month to improve their own strength. Those ancient palaces, let's not go, Xianxia said. We can't go even if we want to. There are probably not many of these palaces. It must be the places that those 9th-rank sects fought for. It's just some treasures and secret techniques. We don't want them. Let's go. Piss. The two of them merged into the heaven and earth and quickly went into the distance. Chen Hao said it casually, but in fact, he was very depressed. If he was a nascent soul cultivator, how could he be so depressed? Strength was everything. Only the fastest way to improve one's strength was the way to go. Gone? It's too difficult to find them with such powerful concealment skills. What a waste of energy. It's better to meet up with the people from the sects and cultivate in peace. Sensing the disappearance of Chen Hao and Xianxia, within 200 to 300 miles, 3 masters at the peak of the nascent soul stage in 3 directions said secretly. The 3 of them were all masters of the Southern Sea Islands, and they were also the ones who received Xianshui's call. Of course, they just happened to sense Chen Hao and Xianxua's aura nearby. In such a holy place for cultivation and a place full of danger, no one was willing to waste energy on looking for people. What's more, they were very clear about how powerful Chen Hao and Xianxua's concealment skills were. After Chen Hao and Xianxia found a hidden cave, they carefully opened up 2 more exits from the cave and sealed all the entrances and set up layers of restrictions. After doing all this, the 2 of them entered their respective caves and immersed themselves in cultivating and comprehending without any distractions. In the blink of an eye, 10 days had passed. In the huge cave, Chen Hao had already excavated a huge space with a radius of thousands of feet and set up layers of seals and aura concealment enchantments. At this moment, Chen Hao stood in the middle of the cave and swung his sword. Stab, reverse strike, reverse chop, spin swing, sweep, side slash. Every sword was stabbed out with all his strength, and they were all the basic sword moves of the solitary sword technique. They were all fused swords. What he wanted to do was to completely fuse the solitary sword technique, platinum sky splitting slash, sword intent, and space attribute mysteries. Every sword and every movement must be perfect and become his instinct. Not only did he need to comprehend it with his brain, but he also needed to comprehend it with his body. Only in this way could it become his instinctive reaction. The reason for this was that Chen Hao realized it when he was facing the fast sword attack of Sword Dance Fei. If he could do this at that time, why would he need to focus on catching the opponent's flaws? There was no need to waste any time on catching the opponent's moves, and he could naturally make the most accurate instinctive attack. This was the highest level of the solitary sword technique. Such a consumption was absolutely enormous. After every 9 swords, Chen Hao's energy would be exhausted. It had to be said that following the increase of his level, Chen Hao's attacks became stronger and stronger, and the consumption of energy also became greater and greater. 9 swords of fused swords was his limit. Luckily, Chen Hao had a large amount of spirit spring. The recovery time was greatly reduced. Huff! After exhausting his strength once again and exhausting all his energy and true essence, Chen Hao let out a long breath and jumped naked into the spirit spring that was 10 feet in radius and 10 feet deep. It's been 10 days, and the sword intent has only improved a little. It seems that the heavenly Dao law here has no effect on the sword intent. Only fighting can improve it. What Chen Hao wanted to improve the most was the sword intent, but in 10 days, although the fusion of the basic sword moves of the solitary sword technique was still not perfect, it had improved a lot. The true essence of the space attribute, and even the true essence of the wind attribute that Chen Hao did not cultivate had improved a lot. There was a faint trend of a breakthrough. The density of true essence had also increased by about 10%, faintly reaching the limit of Chen Hao's half-step nascent soul stage. But the sword intent was still at the second level of the sword path. It's not bad. Chen Hao slowly closed his eyes. When he recovered his true essence, it was also when he fully sensed the heavenly Dao law. In the crazy cultivation, another 10 days passed in the blink of an eye. Voila! Chen Hao jumped out of the spirit spring naked. No, I must fight. Chen Hao's eyes shone with a strong fighting spirit as he gritted his teeth and said, after 20 days of crazy cultivation, he clearly felt that his progress was getting smaller and smaller. Faintly, he had reached his limit in all aspects and entered a bottleneck state. There was not much meaning in continuing to cultivate like this. Only fighting. After sending out a wisp of his mind, Chen Hao, dressed in a blue dress, appeared in front of him not long after. Her long hair was wet like a lotus flower emerging from the water. I've reached the bottleneck and need to fight. What about you? So fast? Chen Shui was slightly surprised. I'll accompany you. If you haven't reached your limit, you don't have to accompany me. Just wait for me here, there won't be a problem. Chen Hao said confidently. Well then be careful. Chen Shui said after a slight hesitation. She was very clear that although her cultivation realm was higher than Chen Hao's, her true combat strength was definitely inferior to Chen Hao's at this moment. Furthermore, there was a gap. Even if he encountered a half-step incarnation realm, as long as he did not fall into an encirclement, Chen Hao should not be in danger. If you have a situation here, send a message to me immediately. After Chen Hao finished talking, he directly turned into a stream of light and disappeared in front of Chen Shui. Leaving Chen Shui and going 10,000 miles or so, Chen Hao released the aura around him without the slightest scruple. Come on, as long as it's not half-step incarnation realm, all die for me. Chen Hao said with lofty sentiments in his heart. He wanted to kill the demonic beasts and obtain the spiritual herbs. Unfortunately, 20 days had passed and the aura of the demonic beasts seemed to be very weak. Along the way, he did not encounter any cultivators. Needless to say, most of the treasures that could be plundered had been plundered. Moreover, most of the cultivators should have found a place to cultivate and entered it. What he could look forward to now was that after someone sensed his aura, they would come over on their own. Secondly, he would go deep into the core area where the demonic beasts were extremely powerful. Lastly, he would try to enter the palace. Entering the palace was obviously not possible at this moment. If there were no accidents, it would have long been occupied by the powerful sections. Chen Hao had been there for a full hour. As Chen Hao continued to go deeper, there were still no cultivators who came to find trouble. This made Chen Hao, who urgently needed to fight, want to take the initiative to find the hidden cultivators. But in the end he did not do so. After all, he did not have the potential to be a pure evil person. Just as Chen Hao was about to enter the core of this space and see a huge palace in the distance, a strange fluctuation suddenly appeared in his mind, as if it was calling out to him from the unseen world. Is it you guys? Chen Hao could not help but ask the mysterious existence and treasure hunter's sword spirit in his mind. What are we doing? Could it be my opportunity? Hearing the answers of the two fellows, Chen Hao's eyes suddenly shone with a hint of excitement. Third update. The fourth update might be a little late. Brothers and sisters who can't wait will see it tomorrow. We, Proud Heaven, are promoting it. Please give us some support, brothers and sisters. Anything is fine. Thank you. Chapter 295. That's right, this must be an opportunity that belongs to me. This is a battle of luck. Chen Shui and I have snatched the small cultivation grotto heaven and killed 6 top geniuses. Naturally, we will snatch their luck and condense it into our own. And it's all in the city in the sky. Since there is a test, how can it not be related to this palace? Chen Hao's mind spun like lightning, and he quickly confirmed his judgment. However, he did not move forward immediately. Instead, he restrained his aura and flew 1,000 miles away. He crushed the last communication charm and waited quietly. 2 hours later, Chen Shui met up with Chen Hao at the fastest speed. As Chen Hao expected, Chen Shui also felt a trace of summoning power. Boom, boom, boom. When Chen Hao and Chen Shui appeared 100 miles away from the palace like 2 gusts of wind, huge energy explosions continuously came from the palace in the void. At this moment, the palace was 1,000 feet wide and 50 feet tall. More than 30 cultivators gathered at the gate. The leader was Yi Shanshui, the commander of the South Sea Islands. He was in a white robe and his eyebrows were knitted tightly. It was obvious that he was extremely angry. It had been 20 days. It was fine that he did not receive any news from Chen Hao and Chen Shui. However, he had used his absolute strength to drive away all the people from the powerful sects in the core of the ancient city. After occupying the largest palace, he could not break open the dam gate. He had not been able to enter until now. Yu Qingfeng and the other disciples of the Coiling Dragon Valley were all gathered here. More than 30 people had wasted 18 days on the gate. They tried again and again, but failed again and again. When they were exhausted, they meditated to recover and comprehend the law of heaven. When they recovered to their peak, they used their strongest unique skills to bombard the gate. They did not delay their cultivation. Otherwise, no one would be willing to waste time like this. There is no reason, absolutely no reason. We are the most powerful sect among the 3 forces, and I, Yi Shanshui, deserve to be ranked number 1. Why can't we break open the best palace? Do we still need to wait? Senior brother Yi, we've tried everything, but the restriction on the door is too strong. We don't know what material it is made of, but it's so hard that we can't move it at all. If this goes on, we won't be able to break it. I really can't figure out who has better luck than us. One of the half-step incarnation realm experts said with a frown. His heart was also extremely depressed. To be able to enter the palace, there was a certain amount of opportunity and luck, but the most important thing was strength. As long as they were strong enough, they could just forcefully break into the palace after occupying it. Many palaces were also occupied by powerful sections. Impossible. Our strength is the strongest, and our luck is also the strongest. There is no reason why we can't open it. After persevering for so long, how could he give up now? Perhaps it was a matter of time. Keep bombarding. Yi Shanshui said arrogantly. What should we do? When Chen Hao and Chen Shui arrived near the palace quietly, Chen Shui stared at Yi Shanshui, Yu Qingfeng and the others and transmitted her voice to them. When they stop attacking, we'll quietly go over and observe the situation. If we can easily break the restriction on the door, there will be no problem. If we can't, we can only avoid them. Damn it, it's actually this group of scum. Chen Hao said gloomily. Boom, 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 boom. Suddenly, when the disciples of the Coiling Dragon Valley began to attack the gate again, the huge golden gate suddenly erupted with a dazzling light. An extremely terrifying aura and repulsive force surged out from the gate, followed by several shrill screams. The few disciples closest to the gate actually spat out blood one by one and were sent flying. At the same time, Chen Hao and Chen Shui revealed a look of surprise at the same time. This was because, although the originally faint summoning force became stronger as the 2 of them approached the palace, there was a limit to the growth. However, at this moment, it suddenly became 100 or 1,000 times stronger, and the 2 of them had an impulse to rush directly to the door. Can we go in directly? Chen Shui said in surprise. Of course. This is too fucking awesome. This sudden change made Chen Hao burst out cursing. The gloominess in his heart was swept away. As he spoke, the summoning force became even stronger and madly attacked Chen Hao and Chen Shui's souls. At this time, even without Chen Hao's reply, Chen Shui clearly knew that she was right. Come, let's go to the door first. When I'm done, we'll go in together. Seeing that Yi Shanshui and the others were so shocked by the strange appearance of the door that they stopped, Chen Hao said excitedly. You want to attack? Of course. Anyway, when we enter, they will definitely know that someone has occupied it. With the temperament of these people, how can they not guard it? Kill as many as we can. But this? The two of them were silent, but they rushed to the door as fast as they could. What's going on? Yi Shanshui and the others were looking at the disciples who had just been seriously injured, and asked with a trace of shock. One of them was a master of the half-step incarnation realm, but his face was still pale, and he was obviously seriously injured. Before those few disciples had the time to answer, two extremely terrifying and incomparably sharp auras suddenly erupted from the entrance. Especially one of them, the aura contained within it was so strong that even experts of the half-step incarnation realm did not dare to lower their guard. It was too sudden, and everyone had no time to react, including Yi Shanshui, who reacted the fastest. They did not have time to condense too much energy, and the only thing they could do was to dodge to the side as fast as possible. In the twinkling of an eye, a sword light that seemed to contain thousands of thunderbolts pierced through the two masters of the late-stage nascent soul realm who were closest to the door. As for the other sword light that was even more terrifying, it contained a profound mystery that made everyone feel shocked. The sword force guided, the sword chi pulled, and the sword force swept out. It carried the terrifying power of a spatial vortex, but it also contained an incomparably fierce sword intent. It was as fast as a swan, and everywhere it passed, there would be continuous screams. Even Yu Qingfeng, who was standing a few people away from the crowd, had an incomparably fast reaction, but he still couldn't avoid it. His eyes were filled with terror, and his eyes were wide open as he watched the soul-stirring sword rapidly expand in his pupils. An incomparably mournful and unwilling scream came out from Yu Qingfeng's mouth. Before his head exploded like a watermelon, he saw Chen Hao, who he wanted to kill even in his dreams, and the stunning beauty Chen Shui, who he wanted to obtain. The corners of Chen Hao's mouth curled up slightly and his cold eyes were fixed on the last moment of his life. His divine soul was destroyed. The Platinum Heaven-Splitting Slash was the basic cultivation technique of the 3000 Great Tao 5 Elements art. The mystery it contained could directly destroy the divine soul. At Chen Hao's level, as long as he could kill someone, there would be no soul left. This was also the reason why Chen Hao directly pierced the soul palace between his eyebrows. Die for me. Yi Shanshui, who had the fastest reaction when he sensed the danger, he instantly retreated dozens of feet away. At this moment, he was extremely furious and attacked with the fastest speed. Wait for me to come out. Hiss, hiss. Chen Hao directly grabbed Chen Shui's small hand, and before Yi Shanshui's attack arrived, they merged into the bright light screen on the door, leaving the arrogant, domineering, and complacent words outside the door. Boom. Yi Shanshui's angry attack landed on the door. Without exception, even with his amazing combat strength, he was directly sent flying by the terrifying rebound force, and spat out a mouthful of blood. It's so good, so fucking good. After entering the palace, Chen Hao was still holding Chen Shui's small hand tightly as he laughed excitedly. How could he not feel good about killing Yu Qingfeng in front of so many powerhouses that he could not compete with? Chen Shui's mood was also very good, it was just that the excited Chen Hao held her hand tightly. Moreover, as a woman, she didn't let her vent like Chen Hao did. Moreover, in her heart, she was more or less shocked by the power of Chen Hao's sword earlier. Just as Chen Shui was struggling for a moment and was about to break free from Chen Hao's hand, Chen Hao's deafening laughter suddenly stopped. At the same time, Chen Shui felt an extremely terrifying and boundless pressure. Almost in an instant, whether it was her or Chen Hao, they were stunned and could not move at all. Both of them spat out a mouthful of blood at practically the same time. Their minds seemed to have been pierced by numerous sword lights that contained extremely terrifying and profound profundities, and their minds and souls fell into extreme pain and struggle at the same time. If it wasn't for the souls of Chen Hao and Chen Shui far exceeding an ordinary person, their souls would probably have dispersed at this instant. Chen Shui clenched her teeth tightly under extreme pain, and her pink and delicate lips were bitten to the point blood flowed out, yet she didn't feel it at all. The pain that came from the depths of her soul had far exceeded the limits of Chen Shui's endurance. Her soul seemed to have been shattered by the terrifying sword lights, and only a trace of consciousness remained. Gradually, When Xianxia recovered a trace of her ability to think, the pain became even more heart-wrenching. She clearly felt as if she was within the terrifying sword lights of lightning. Every single one of these sword lights tore apart space and contained profundities that Xianxia was utterly unable to imagine. It was the profundities of the spatial attribute and lightning attribute, and it was also the sword Dao and sword insight. No, to be precise, it was the profundities of the sword Dao. This was a comprehension that Xianxia had never touched upon. After all, she wasn't even a swordsman. Nor had she comprehended sword insight. I definitely can't faint. I definitely can't faint, Xianxia constantly reminded herself in her mind. Even though her consciousness was extremely slow, but the obsession in her heart made her understand that this was definitely a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity and training. If she could endure it, then her temperament and cultivation would have an astonishing increase. If she couldn't endure it, what would the result be? Xianxia didn't know if she would die here, but at least she knew that she wouldn't gain anything. Chen Hao and Xianxia's situation was similar, but also different. The fourth update. Today is the fourth update. Tomorrow, I will continue to work hard in Dark Mountain. Thank you to the friends who voted for the book review. Thank you. To be continued. If you like this book, you are welcome to come to Qidian. Chapter 296. At the moment of the strange change, the sword light contained a terrifying aura that Chen Hao could not imagine. This kind of horror definitely exceeded Chen Hao's limit. Almost instantly, Chen Hao fell into extreme shock, and this kind of shock became stronger and stronger. Even though Chen Hao had a strong mind and had also been baptized by the sword light of the mysterious existence and the treasure-hunting sword spirit, he almost lost his consciousness in this kind of horror and fear. Immediately, after Chen Hao recovered a little of his ability to think, as a swordsman who had promoted his sword essence to the second heaven of sword principle, he clearly felt a terrifying sword principle will. At first, Chen Hao did not understand what kind of legendary sword principle will was at all because it would change on its own every once in a while, causing Chen Hao's remaining consciousness to change along with it, and he tasted all kinds of pain that Chen Hao had never experienced before. Time passed minute by minute. Under this kind of terrifying pressure and sword principle will, the physical body and soul of the two people were enduring an unimaginable test. Every minute and every second was as long as a century. It's the last day. Outside the palace, there were only more than 20 disciples of the coiling dragon valley of the South Sea Islands left. At this moment, after Xianxia and the others tried several times, no one dared to attack the door anymore. However, they did not leave, and all of them wanted to strangle Chen Hao to death and ravage Xianxia to death. Especially Xianxia. Not only was Yu Chengfeng killed by Chen Hao right under his nose, but even the two beautiful women who came with him were killed by Chen Hao's sword. Women were his reverse scale. How could he not hate? How could he not be angry? This was a humiliation he had never suffered since his debut. At this moment, he, who was half-step to incarnation, and the surrounding junior brothers and sisters, all raised their auras to the extreme. They knew very well that today, Chen Hao and Xianxia would definitely come out of the palace. Although they knew that the moment they came out might be the moment they left the Sky Castle, half a second was enough. In just a moment he could blast Chen Hao into powder. He would not even let Xianxia go. Since he could not get it, he could only destroy it. This was because he knew that once the Sky Castle was out, with Xianxia's concealment skills, even he could not do anything. As time passed, Xianxia and the others became more and more nervous. Everyone held their breaths and circulated their true yuan to the limit, and could launch their strongest attack at any time. But, suddenly, an incomparably profound fluctuation appeared in the space, and pillars of light poured down, completely enveloping everyone. However, the palace's doors were still tightly shut. How is it possible? Could it be they died in the palace? They must have died in the palace. Damn it, he let them. The moment Xianxia and the others disappeared from the Sky Castle, they all thought to themselves in despair. There was only one reason why he didn't come out of the palace, and that was because he died in the palace's trial. However, they did not know that thousands of miles away from the palace, two breezes that had merged with all things in the world suddenly appeared the moment the pillars of light appeared from the void. Chen Shui, who was wearing a blue dress, had a pair of beautiful eyes under the veil. She inadvertently emitted an aura that could destroy the world. If some cultivators were present at this moment, they definitely wouldn't want to do anything to Chen Shui after seeing her beautiful figure. It wasn't that they didn't want to, but they didn't dare. Even a late-stage nascent soul expert would not dare to have such thoughts because the aura in Chen Shui's eyes was too terrifying. Although she looked extremely weak at this moment, on the other hand, Chen Hao did not seem to have changed much apart from being weak. At least, there was almost no difference with him before he entered the palace. However, the corners of this guy's mouth curled up slightly with an indescribable smile. 10 minutes ago, Chen Hao and Chen Shui had already awoken from the terrifying pressure and their respective sword wills. At that time, regardless of whether it was their physical bodies or souls, they were extremely weak. After 10 consecutive days, not a trace of true essence was left. Moreover, it was obvious that they had suffered extremely serious injuries. Fortunately, after the pressure and sword Dao wills disappeared, the two of them were not ejected from the palace. Otherwise, they would definitely have died in the hands of Yi Shanshui. However, there was only 10 minutes. Even with the help of the spirit spring, such serious weakness and injuries could not be completely recovered. Fortunately, when the two of them tried to use the carving technique to merge with everything in the world to break open the wall made of an unknown material, they were enveloped by two different mysterious auras. Two completely different mysterious auras directly entered the space between their eyebrows, while the other two similar mysterious auras were familiar spatial fluctuations. In an instant, the two of them were teleported hundreds of miles away from the palace. The two of them had no time to be surprised. They naturally restrained their auras and quickly left the palace. Enveloped by the pillars of light, the two of them disappeared from the sky castle at the same time. The moment they appeared in the Mirage Desert, the two of them saw a flash of light and directly changed into two breezes and disappeared without a trace. Let's find a place to heal first and cultivate in seclusion for a period of time. In the void, Chen Hao, who had merged with all things in the world, said to Chen Shui, "Let's stay in this Mirage Desert. Those disciples probably won't stay here." Although the two of them had swallowed a large number of elixirs at this moment, they were still extremely weak and could barely maintain flight. At this moment, if they encountered a slightly stronger opponent, the two of them would not be able to resist. Moreover, the two of them had gained a lot in the palace. While their minds were still enveloped by the terrifying pressure and sword Dao wills, it was undoubtedly the best time to digest and absorb. At this moment, the two of them naturally held hands together. From the beginning of entering the palace to walking out of the palace, the two of their hands were stuck together like dog skin plaster and never separated again. Moreover, it was so natural that even Chen Shui did not realize it. 3 hours later, Chen Hao and Chen Shui were far away from the place where the sky castle appeared, which was a full 50,000 miles away. After confirming that it was relatively safe, the two of them dug out 200 feet deep caves on the huge sand dune and covered it tightly. They entered respectively and began to cultivate in seclusion. In the blink of an eye, 5 days had passed. Chen Hao and Chen Shui had already recovered to their peak state, but the two of them did not walk out of the cave and were still immersed in cultivation and comprehension. What a terrifying sword essence! Suddenly, Chen Hao, who was immersed in cultivation, sensed a powerful sword essence. Although the sword essence was not sword principle will, it contained an aura that shocked Chen Hao, who had just broken through to the third heaven of sword principle. Although the sword essence was obviously 2 levels lower than Chen Hao's and was only at the peak of the first heaven of sword principle, it seemed to have the power to destroy heaven and earth and actually contain the sword principle attribute. Could it be that she has obtained the destruction sword principle? Chen Hao opened his eyes and a trace of shock flashed in his eyes. Even he was a little envious and jealous of him. He was not shocked that Chen Shui could emit the aura of sword principle will. After all, the terrifying pressure and sword light in the palace inherited the sword principle attribute. Especially at the last moment when the two of them came out, The mysterious aura that entered the space between their brows was a strand of pure and powerful sword principle will. Chen Shui could not emit it now because she had comprehended the sword principle will, but because she had activated the sword principle will that did not belong to her. Otherwise, it would not have appeared and disappeared instantly. Chen Hao was shocked because the sword principle attribute that Chen Shui had obtained was actually the destruction sword principle. At that time, his father was the first to speak of the destruction sword principle, so it was very likely to be the most powerful sword principle attribute, right? What about him? Until now, he had no idea what sword principle attribute he had obtained. Firstly, he had not comprehended it. Secondly, the aura of the sword principle attribute was impossible to comprehend. It seemed to be changing at all times. Every time he tried to comprehend it, it would cause Chen Hao's mood to change greatly and he felt as if he was going crazy. It felt as if he was facing a bitch whose mood was constantly changing. After a short moment of shock, Chen Hao immersed himself in comprehension once again. Fuck! However, not long after, Chen Hao cursed impatiently. He looked like he was unable to restrain his anger, and even the true origin around his body was circulating in an extremely terrifying manner. Chen Hao woke up from his anger and was really surprised. What sword principle attribute is this? It can actually affect my state of mind? Could it be the secular sword principle? Chen Hao guessed. Chen Hao did not have a deep understanding of the sword principle attribute. He only knew the names of several sword principle attributes from his father. He did not have a deep understanding of it. The reason why he could determine Chen Shui's sword principle attribute was entirely based on the meaning of the name. It should be, only in the secular world there are emotions and desires. I'm afraid only the secular sword principle can affect the mood of a cultivator. It shouldn't be. Chen Shui could comprehend the destruction sword principle because of her space attribute and thunder attribute, but why did I obtain such a bad one? The secular sword principle could not be compared to the destruction sword principle just based on its name alone. Moreover, when his father mentioned it, it was ranked in the last 2 or 3. It doesn't matter, it's better than nothing. I can only wait until I really comprehend it and see how powerful it is. It's almost time. I can't improve much in a short period of time, Chen Hao said. After he finished speaking, his mind moved, and an aura spread out and rushed to the cave where Chen Shui was. An hour later, Chen Shui came out of her cultivation state with a look of intense surprise. The aura around her was much more terrifying than 5 days ago. Moreover, this was an aura that completely belonged to her, and not the aura that remained in the palace on her when she came out. When Chen Shui came to Chen Hao's side with a trace of joy, she could not help but say, "I have sword essence." I sensed it. Congratulations, when you comprehend the sword principle attribute in your mind, you will definitely be more powerful. Chen Hao said. It seems to be the destruction sword principle? Chen Shui's understanding of sword principle was even worse than Chen Hao's. It should be. I don't know much about these. It's almost time for us to leave, Chen Hao said. First update. Chapter 297. Taishan City was the closest city to the Mirage Desert. Chen Hao and Chen Shui went to 2 different transmission arrays and waved goodbye. The Mirage Desert was not a good place for long-term closed-door training, and Chen Shui could not stay out for too long. Therefore, after making sure that both of them had recovered to their peak state and had completely consolidated their gains in the palace, they decided to go back. 2 days later, Chen Hao came to Huaxing City, the closest city to the Xiaoxing sect. Huaxing City was only 40,000 miles away from the Xiaoxing sect, which was not a distance at all for Chen Hao at the moment. Flying at full speed, in less than a quarter of an hour, a mountain peak that pierced the sky appeared in Chen Hao's eyes. After only half a year of experience, Chen Hao returned again, and he was already a master half a step away from the nascent soul realm. In terms of the speed of cultivation, Chen Hao seemed to be inferior to Fan Fong. However, at this moment, Chen Hao's reputation in the entire Eastern Continent's cultivation world had reached a level where it was like the sun in the sky. He had vaguely surpassed the super geniuses of the top 10 ninth grade sections. Even Chu Qingtian, Gu Xing and Wu Ruochen, who were half a step away from the incarnation realm, were suppressed by Chen Hao. It could not be helped. The Sky City ranked 6th in the test. When Chen Hao and others entered the Sky City, the disciples who were eliminated in the Eastern Continent spread the news throughout the Eastern Continent. And within a few days after the end of the trial in the Sky City, the news that Chen Hao had killed several top geniuses of the South Sea Islands began to spread. It was not an exaggeration to say that his name was known in the Eastern Continent. When Chen Hao came to the protective boundary of the Xiaoxing sect, with a hint of expectation, he took out the sect token. After a wave of space fluctuations, Chen Hao stepped into the Xiaoxing sect. "You? Our senior brother Chen Hao?" Among the several disciples guarding the gate, when the first one saw Chen Hao, he immediately showed an extremely respectful expression and seemed to be very surprised as he asked, "Yes." Chen Hao glanced at everyone and nodded slightly in response. Other than the one who asked the question, who was the leader of the inner disciples, the others were all outer disciples. Senior brother Chen Hao is back. What a powerful aura. He's probably at the half-step nascent soul realm, right? I'm a disciple of the 100 dynasties, ranking even earlier than senior martial brother Chen Hao. I really can't compare. Don't compete with me, or you'll be discouraged. Just compete with me. Brother Chen Hao is now famous in the world of cultivation. Even the disciples of the 9th grade sect can't compete with our brother Chen Hao. That's right, that's right. This is going to be fun. I wonder how senior brother Chen Hao will handle this. Who knows? As Chen Hao flew up into the air and flew towards the mountain peak he was on, several disciples behind him were discussing in low voices with extreme envy. Not a single word escaped into Chen Hao's ears. What to do? What do you mean? Chen Hao was slightly surprised. Don't tell me there's trouble as soon as I come back? Chen Hao couldn't figure out what trouble the star-picking sect could be in. At this moment, even the core disciples of the star-picking sect posed no threat to Chen Hao. What trouble could there be? Chen Hao unscrupulously released his telepathic senses. The star-picking sect, which used to be huge for Chen Hao, suddenly appeared clearly in his mind. The 3,600 mountain peaks of the star-picking sect were only a few hundred miles in radius. Chen Hao's telepathic range had now broken through 700 miles. The moment Chen Hao released his aura, the experts of the star-picking sect immediately sensed it. Bush, bush, bush. Several figures suddenly flew up from the mountain peaks and locked onto Chen Hao in an instant. Good boy, it only took half a year to reach the half-step nascent soul stage. His aura is even more vigorous and vast. Even the late-stage nascent soul stage can't compare with him. No wonder he could kill the top genius of the South Sea Islands. Several outer court elders were shocked when they noticed that it was Chen Hao from afar. The outer elder Wu Zichuan and the inner elder, who was also the elder of imparting skills, immediately turned into streamers after seeing Chen Hao and appeared in front of Chen Hao in an instant. Chen Hao, you're finally back. When Wu Zichuan and the elder of imparting skills saw Chen Hao, it was as if they had seen their savior. Greetings, great elder, Elder Wu. Chen Hao cupped his fists and said. However, there was a faint sense of uneasiness in his heart. The words of the disciples and the two elders just now made Chen Hao certain that something must have something to do with him. Moreover, it was something that even the two elders couldn't handle. No need to be so polite. Hurry up and solve the problem in your backyard. Fortunately, you came back in time. The sect leader is not here. No matter how we interfere, we can't do anything. The elder of imparting skills said with a headache. My backyard? What's going on? Chen Hao asked in surprise. Since they were talking about his backyard, Chen Hao naturally thought of Helian Wuzi, who had already arrived at the star-picking sect, and Tan Tai Lien, who had yet to come out of the Seven Stars Grotto Heaven. However, Chen Hao couldn't figure it out. According to Chen Hao's estimation, Helian Wuzi should be in the Seven Stars Grotto Heaven at this moment. Whether Tan Tai Lien came out or not, it was unlikely that they would meet. What could be wrong with his backyard? You probably don't know that Helian Wuzi is already in the late nascent soul stage, right? Tan Tai Lien also came out 2 months ago when the Seven Stars Grotto Heaven opened. When she came out, she was already half a step away from the nascent soul stage. The next day, she triggered Heaven's punishment and stepped into the nascent soul stage. Her combat power is amazing. Cough cough. Chen Hao was embarrassed. Hellion Wuzi had already surpassed him in the secular world. This already made the arrogant Chen Hao feel a little embarrassed. However, Tantai Lian, who was in the 7 Stars Grotto Heaven, could actually advance to such a stage. This made Chen Hao even more embarrassed. Fortunately, his combat power was not as simple as the stage itself. Otherwise, he would just find a piece of tofu and kill himself. One had to know that they were not like Xia Yuyu, who was stronger than him from the beginning. Both of them were weaker than him. Since he stepped into the cultivation world, he was the only one who surpassed others. When had he ever been surpassed? This should have been a good thing that would have shaken the entire cultivation world. However, not long after Tantai Lian stepped into the nascent soul realm, probably because of you, the two of them actually fought and Tantai Lian was defeated. The Grand Elder continued. And then? Then Tantai Lian and Hellion Wuzi agreed to fight in 2 months. The loser will leave the star-picking sect. Great Elder said. Sigh, although we elders, Little Ting, and the rest tried to persuade them, the two of them had already made up their minds and refused to give in to each other. It was useless no matter who said anything. Chen Hao, if I'm not wrong, it must be because of you. You should quickly go back and settle it. You can't let them fight. 3 days later is the date of their agreed battle. What should I do? What should I do? Chen Hao was in a dilemma. He excitedly returned with anticipation. However, the moment he returned, Chen Hao felt a headache coming on. Although he had already anticipated that such a situation would occur, it came a little too quickly, a little too sharply. Moreover, according to Chen Hao's understanding of the two of them, whether it was Hellion Wuzi or Tantai Lian, they shouldn't be so intense. How did it develop to such an extent? A short distance of 200 miles was originally something that Chen Hao could cover in an instant. However, Chen Hao's flying speed became slower and slower. He was like an ox cart crawling in the air. He was really in a dilemma. This kind of dilemma should never appear on a swordsman. A swordsman's temperament was pure and sharp. No matter what matter or problem they faced, they would go straight to the heart without the slightest hesitation. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to become a swordsman. However, Chen Hao was already a swordsman and could be straightforward and efficient in other matters. However, when it came to relationships, it seemed to be a minefield for him. In the past, Chen Hao's temperament was as firm as a rock. He was cold and emotionless. He had never experienced any relationship between a man and a woman. The current Chen Hao, after the soul fusion, had always maintained the necessary caution. He didn't dare to carelessly touch the relationship between a man and a woman. It seemed that there was a kind of fear in the depths of his heart. However, it was still inevitable that they would meet and become entangled together. The first Hellion Wuzi, the accidental encounter with Xia Yu, the chance encounter with Tantai Lian, uncontrollably, when he thought of these 3 people, Chen Hao's mind naturally surfaced Chen Shui in a blue dress. His head became even bigger. Wow! Senior Chen Hao, it's Senior Chen Hao. Senior Chen Hao is back. So handsome, so strong, so melancholy. Don't be love-struck, we are a match made in heaven. When Chen Hao's face was full of confusion and he was slowly flying in the air like an ox cart, some disciples who were cultivating on the mountain peak one after another raised their heads to look at Chen Hao. However, at this time, Chen Hao acted as if he didn't hear anything. It was as if he had fallen into his inner demon. Cough cough, Great Elder, it's more serious than we thought. Elder Wu and the Great Elder, who had already left, stared at Chen Hao from afar. Elder Wu said a little worriedly. There's no other way. This is something that he has to experience. Sooner or later he will encounter it. It's just a little too early. He can only blame his talent for being too high, his luck is too strong, and he's too handsome. Such an outstanding person, if he's not cold-blooded, his luck with women would be frighteningly strong. His aura was originally at the peak of the half-step nascent soul stage, and he would soon be able to trigger the heavenly punishment, but now it seems that it will take a long time. Elder Chuan frowned and said. However, before he finished speaking, he suddenly exclaimed, as if he had discovered something. His eyes suddenly emitted two bright lights. At the same time, Elder Wu also revealed a shocked expression. What a profound and sharp sword intent, this? How is this possible? With such a sharp and profound sword intent, how can he hesitate? How can he be bound by feelings? Elder Chuan murmured in shock. Half a year ago, when Xianxia went to train, he did not comprehend sword intent at all. Moreover, the two of them did not sense any sword intent from Xianxia at all just now. But at this moment, Xianxia, who seemed to have fallen into his inner demons, actually naturally emitted a sharp and profound sword intent as if he did not feel it. How could the two of them not be surprised? But immediately, the two of them, even Elder Chuan, revealed a look of deep confusion, because the sword intent aura on Xianxia's body had magically changed. Since when could the sword intent aura change? Second update. Dark Mountain, continue to work hard. Try to finish the third chapter before 12 o'clock. Brothers and sisters who can't wait can read it tomorrow. Sorry, the plot changes, I'm especially slow in editing. Chapter 298. Xianxia, who was immersed in thinking about how to deal with emotional issues, didn't feel anything unusual about himself at all. He was only thinking about how to deal with the relationship between Helian Wuxi and Tantai Lian. The matter of the duel wasn't a problem. The problem was how would the two of them get along in the future? This wasn't a question of who was more important. Xianxia didn't want to compare, and couldn't compare. To think that I was a great person in my previous life. A small emotional issue has already stumped me. Sigh, the feeling of being with Xianxia is still better. There's no need to think so much. Xianxia couldn't help but think in his heart. During this period of time with Xianxia, perhaps because of the relationship between the two of them, but also because they weren't biological siblings, their interactions with each other were extremely indifferent and detached. They could do whatever they wanted. Even if they intuitively felt that the relationship between them was a little beyond that of siblings, they didn't really care. Everything was natural. Whatever, let's see what's going on with them first. Thinking of this, Xianxia tossed aside his muddled thoughts. He, who was flying like an ox cart, suddenly disappeared in front of everyone's eyes. At the same time, his aura also disappeared. Xianxia simply didn't know and didn't care. His series of actions shocked the Elder Chuan Gong and Great Elder who were paying attention to him. Psst. A wisp of cool breeze quietly appeared on the mountain peak named after Xianxia. As the owner of the mountain peak, Xianxia didn't need to expend too much mental energy to easily control the situation of the entire mountain peak. What surprised Xianxia was that Helian Wuxi's aura was actually emitted from Tantai Lian's palace, and Tantai Lian lived in a palace far away. What's going on? Xianxia frowned slightly. He quietly sent out 3 messages and directly entered his own palace. In a moment, Yang Fan, Li Feng, and Ni Jianpain entered Xianxia's palace with a trace of excitement. Xianxia, senior brother Chen, you're finally back. Li Feng couldn't wait to say as soon as he entered the door. Who is that Helian Wuxi to you? It's too powerful, too domineering. Cough cough. Xianxia didn't expect Li Feng to say such a thing. Could it be that the two forces were fighting? Xianxia felt depressed in his heart. Motherfucker, I just didn't show up when Xiao Wu and the others came over. That shouldn't be the case. What's going on? Tell me first. Xianxia said, Yang Fan, you tell me. Yang Fan and Ni Jianpain's expressions were relatively calm, far less exaggerated than Li Feng's. It was a small matter at first, but it turned into a big deal later on. Most importantly, it was because of you. Be specific. When Yang Fan told the story, Xianxia was speechless. The fuse was actually Dongfang Jun and Mo Yui. Dongfang Jun was originally a troublemaker who made people feel that he deserved a beating. Xianxia could still understand, but what made Xianxia dumbfounded was that the blockhead Mo Yui was also involved. It turned out that after Dongfang Ting brought Helian Wuxi and the others to Xianxia's mountain peak, she introduced them to Yang Fan and the others and brought Helian Wuxi to see the sect master. In the end, when Dongfang Jun and Mo Yui chose to live in the palace first, the two of them insisted that Helian Wuzi occupy Tan Tai Lian's palace. The reason was simple. Tan Tai Lian's palace was the closest to Chen Hao's palace, and it was in the right-hand position. Although Li Yifeng, Yang Fan, and Ni Jianpei knew that Helian Wuzi and the others were Chen Hao's acquaintances through Dongfang Ting, how could they let Helian Wuzi occupy Tan Tai Lian's place? After all, they had a better relationship with Tan Tai Lian. In addition, Dongfang Jun's words were as annoying as an idiot's. Although Yang Fan was very reserved in his words, Chen Hao knew that Li Yifeng, who could not hold his temper and was more protective of Tan Tai Lian, must be unhappy. In the end, it directly evolved into Dongfang Jun's arrogant provocation of Li Yifeng. How could Dongfang Jun be his opponent? But the silent Mo Yui was even more ruthless. The moment Dongfang Jun and Li Feng attacked, he directly drew his sword. The battle power of the two guys combined was actually unbearable for Li Yifeng. Could Yang Fan and Ni Jianpei watch foolishly? Needless to say, Mo Yui and Dongfang Jun's faces were naturally bruised and swollen. It was a tragic sight. Of course, this was because Yang Fan and the others had a sense of propriety. They were not willing to seriously injure the two and just wanted to teach them a lesson. But they did not expect that the two of them actually had a desperate stance and would not stop no matter what. At this time, Helian Wuzi, who had met the sect master, returned. How could Helian Wuzi not care when she saw Mo Yui and Dongfang Jun being beaten up? Once she attacked, it became a tragic sight for Yang Fan and the others. They were directly suppressed by Helian Wuzi and could not even speak. And Dongfang Jun arrogantly let Helian Wuzi stay in Tan Tai Lian's palace. Then there was Tan Tai Lian, who came out 2 months ago. After hearing the news from Li Yifeng and the others, she was naturally incomparably furious. Who was she? She was already Chen Hao's woman. How could she endure the grievance of having her palace snatched away? At the same time that she was shocked by Helian Wuzi's strength, Tan Tai Lian directly triggered the heavenly punishment. After entering the nascent soul stage, she challenged Helian Wuzi. In the end, she did not expect that she would still lose. Just like this, the situation became more and more rigid. Now, if there was you, there would be no me. If there was me, there would be no you. Damn it, I said it shouldn't be. So it's all because of you guys. After listening to Yang Fan's statement, Chen Hao heaved a sigh of relief and said, both of them have entered the 7 Stars Grotto heaven, right? Then what are you waiting for? Why aren't you going to train? If you don't work hard, you will be surpassed by those two guys. Cough cough, we just came back. 3 days later is the battle between Xiaolian and that Helian Wuzi. Chen Hao, senior brother Chen, you can't let Xiaolian be wronged. Li Feng said and paused slightly. But with your current strength, can you suppress Helian Wuzi? That woman is really too domineering, too terrifying. I really can't understand how she could advance to the late stage of the nascent soul stage when she just came to the cultivation world. You don't have to worry about this. I have my own ways. Alright, all of you can go. After Chen Hao finished speaking, he directly disappeared in front of the 3 of them. He took the lead to walk out of his palace and went directly to Helian Wuzi's palace. Seeing Chen Hao leave, Li Yifeng glanced at Yang Fan and Ni Jianpei and said, do you think Chen Hao can handle it? He should be able to. We are also in the middle stage of the golden core stage. Chen Hao is only half a step away from the nascent soul stage, but his aura is stronger than the late stage of the nascent soul stage that we have seen. At least, Chen Hao's aura is not as strong as Helian Wuzi's. Moreover, Chen Hao obtained the 6th place in the Sky City test. His opponents were all super geniuses of the Eastern continent, including those from the 9th rank sects. It's not something we can imagine. Ni Jianpei said. After the 3 of them obtained the qualification to enter the 7 Stars Grotto heaven, they had all improved tremendously. However, this time, they were only in the middle stage of the golden core stage and did not qualify for the inner disciple competition. Don't worry, he can handle it. Let's go. If we don't work hard, we may really be surpassed by those 2 arrogant guys. Why are the people from the Jinyuan kingdom so abnormal? Let's go and train. Aren't we waiting for the results? Li Yifeng said. We shouldn't care about this at all. Relationship problems should be decided by Chen Hao himself. It's not right for us to do this. I believe he should be able to handle it. This. Chen Hao quietly entered the palace and came to the door of the cultivation room that was tightly shut. He used his aura that was integrated with all things in the world and easily broke the restriction on the door. Like a breeze, he floated into the cultivation room. A familiar aura floated in the huge cultivation room. Helian Wuzi was dressed in a loose white training robe that was spotless. She was as cold as the moon and was like a jade guanyin. She sat cross-legged and was immersed in cultivation. What kind of inheritance is this? However, when Chen Hao saw Helian Wuzi, his eyes flashed with a touch of shock. Above Helian Wuzi, who was sitting cross-legged, there was actually a faintly flickering illusory figure. This figure was extremely similar to Helian Wuzi, but the mysterious aura it emitted was even stronger than Helian Wuzi herself. Furthermore, it was an aura that Chen Hao was completely unable to understand. The power of samsara. At this moment, the mysterious existence that did not speak easily suddenly said with a trace of surprise. At least Chen Hao had not encountered anything that could surprise the mysterious existence. The power of samsara? This is the fourth possibility that you mentioned? Chen Hao was shocked. When he knew that Helian Wuzi was in the late nascent soul stage, the mysterious existence gave Chen Hao for speculations. The most likely was that she had awakened the power of samsara. And now it had become a reality. That's right. If this little girl can completely control the power of samsara, she will be an extremely terrifying existence. If you've decided to make her your woman, you can impart the great samsara art of the 3,000 great ways to her when she reaches the primordial soul stage. With the power of samsara, she'll be able to cultivate with twice the result with half the effort. It's just that she's ascending too quickly in order to advance to the nascent soul stage. Otherwise, if she had steadily ascended to the nascent soul stage, her strength wouldn't be so weak. Chen Hao did not disturb Helian Wuzi. From beginning to end, he blended into all things in the world and quietly felt the power of samsara in Helian Wuzi's body. However, the current Chen Hao could not even catch a trace of the mystery contained in it. It wasn't until an hour later that Helian Wuzi let out a long sigh of relief and opened her clear, cold and beautiful eyes. There are still 3 days before the battle with her. I really did not expect it to develop to such a situation. Isn't it just the inheritance of the phoenix? Who does she think she is? Helian Wuzi muttered to herself, and her little mouth could not help but pout. Even Chen Hao had never seen such an expression before. In fact, Helian Wuzi would only reveal such a delicate expression when she was alone. First come, first served, it should be me first. Those few people are really annoying. But if I really force her away when Chen Hao returns, will he blame me? Forget it, at most I will fight to a draw with her. Anyway, she is not weak. In order to keep up with Chen Hao's footsteps, I have improved too quickly. Annoying fellow, I just met him and he went to train. He doesn't care about me at all. Chen Hao was a little dumbfounded. He originally wanted to show himself immediately, but after hearing Helian Wuzi's muttering, Chen Hao did not dare to show himself at this time. However, he was completely relieved in his heart. This is more like it. Third update. Today is the third update. Thank you very much for your tips and votes. Thank you. Chapter 299. Xiao Wu is not a problem here. I didn't expect this girl to have a habit of talking to herself. It makes sense. She's always so cold and won't say a word for a few days. She'll suffocate to death. Even if she doesn't suffocate to death, she won't be able to speak. I'll go check on Xiao Lian again. As Chen Hao thought of this, he turned into a gust of wind and slipped out when Helian Wuzi walked out of the cultivation room. Originally, Chen Hao's direct appearance could still give Helian Wuzi a pleasant surprise. However, after eavesdropping on this little girl's inner monologue, if Chen Hao were to appear again, Helian Wuzi would probably be so embarrassed that she would be unable to show her face. In the blink of an eye, Chen Hao appeared in Tantai Lian's cultivation room silently. However, Chen Hao stood at the door and didn't dare to enter. He had no choice. The entire cultivation room was filled with terrifying flames and attacks. Obviously, Helian Wuzi was cultivating an attack-unique skill. Although it was awesome to merge with everything in the world, it didn't really disappear. It just completely concealed one's aura and figure. If there was an attack, it would definitely be impossible to escape. Moreover, this state restrained all energy. If one was carelessly touched, one could be seriously injured. The blue scorching heat filled the entire space. The temperature of the flames was beyond Chen Hao's imagination. It was the form of heavenly fire and was much stronger than Chen Hao's second-level heavenly fire. Even third-level or fourth-level heavenly fire couldn't be so terrifying. No wonder she dared to fight with Xiao Wu. This heavenly nirvana fire has probably reached the 5th level and is close to the great achievement. Moreover, it has merged with the 7-star unique skill. Staring at Tan Tai Lien, who seemed to have turned into flames, Chen Hao was slightly shocked. Especially the flame attacks that Tan Tai Lien launched time and time again were completely merged with the 7-star sword finger, 7-star sword technique, 7-star footwork, and 7-star sutra. It made Chen Hao feel as if he was facing 7 Tan Tai Liens. Obviously, Tan Tai Lien had completely refined the vital essence all over her body into the vital essence of the 7-star sutra. In other words, Tan Tai Lien had changed her cultivation to basic inner strength. That was the only way he could unleash such power from a 7-star combination unique skill. She only came out for around 2 months. How did she cultivate the 7-star lost art to such a level? In Chen Hao's opinion, Tan Tai Lien should have obtained the ultimate technique after breaking through the 7th level of the 7-star sword array and walking out of the 7-star grotto heaven. With only 2 months, not to mention Tan Tai Lien, even Chen Hao himself wasn't confident that he could cultivate the 4 unique skill combination to such a level. But Tan Tai Lien did it? How could Chen Hao not be shocked? However, Chen Hao did not know that in the 7-star grotto heaven, Tan Tai Lien's encounter was different from his. Chen Hao relied on his understanding of array formations to break the array. However, Tan Tai Lien did not have a freakish ability to comprehend formations like Chen Hao. She completely relied on brute force to destroy them. Destroying and deciphering were 2 different concepts. It was also because of this that the 2 of them had different encounters in the 7-star palace. When Tan Tai Lien destroyed the 1st level of the array formation, she obtained the 7-star lost art. As for the later levels of the array formation, Tan Tai Lien relied on cultivating the 7-star lost art to continuously improve herself so that she could destroy it layer by layer. Looks like I'll have to change my inner force secret art. The longevity art should only be a primary earth level secret art. After stepping into the golden core stage, I've already cultivated it to the highest level and have almost reached its limit. When I step into the nascent soul stage, I'll have to choose another secret art of a higher level. Seeing Tan Tai Lien unleash such power from the 7-star lost art, Chen Hao thought of himself. The longevity art had accompanied him for many years since he started cultivating it. Chen Hao had never planned to change it. That was because he knew that inner strength ultimate techniques were precious. The biggest taboo was to change it back and forth. But now, the longevity art had obviously reached his limit. Chen Hao vaguely guessed that the expert who had spread the longevity art to the secular world must be someone like Huang Qi, who had tempered his temperament in the secular world. The reason why he didn't appear later was either that he had entered the nascent soul realm and didn't want to enter the secular world, or that he had perished in heaven's punishment. And this was the most likely reason. Phew! After more than 10 minutes, Tan Tai Lien, who was wearing the star-picking robe, finally stopped. The flames around her slowly disappeared. She sat down cross-legged and frowned slightly. Chen Hao waited for a moment. Unfortunately, Tan Tai Lien didn't talk to herself like Helian Wuzi did. After retreating to the door, Chen Hao knocked on the door of the palace and sent out a wisp of thought at the same time. A moment later, Tan Tai Lien opened the door of the palace as fast as lightning and looked at Chen Hao in a daze. Chen Hao frowned slightly, and his expression was cold. He didn't have the slightest joy of meeting. Instead, he seemed to have something on his mind. It couldn't be helped. Chen Hao didn't have any experience in matters of the heart. Before he knew what Tantai Lien was thinking, he could only put on a cold face and give her some psychological pressure. At least let Tantai Lien understand that he was very dissatisfied with their duel and conflict. He was very unhappy and didn't want to see it. He used the carrot and stick policy to serve her. He would give her a date after a slap. He would first put her in her place. Otherwise, if she was really bound by feelings, that wouldn't be what Chen Hao wanted. Tantai Lien's little face was originally filled with surprise, but after seeing Chen Hao's expression, she suddenly felt a little uneasy. Needless to say, Chen Hao definitely knew about her and Helian Wuxi. After being trapped in the Seven Stars Grotto Heaven for more than 2 years, Chen Hao had no choice but to truly unite with her because of her. More or less, Tantai Lien had some worries. Especially when she saw the domineering Helian Wuxi, this uneasiness was even more intense. Perhaps it was because of this that Tantai Lien didn't back down. She wanted to fight for her own position, but she didn't expect things to develop to this stage today. But now that she saw Chen Hao's expression, she regretted her rashness a little. Putting aside whether she could defeat Helian Wuxi, what if Chen Hao wanted to choose Helian Wuxi? "You're back," Chen Hao said. As he spoke, he walked directly into the palace. After sitting down, he stared at Tantai Lien and said with a slightly questioning tone, "What's going on between the two of you?" After hearing Chen Hao's words, Tantai Lien's heart thumped. Especially Chen Hao's tone and expression, it made Tantai Lien even more uneasy. At the same time, she felt extremely wronged. She bit her lips and said, "She snatched my palace first. Am I that easy to bully?" "That's because you're not powerful enough," Chen Hao said. "Should I be bullied because I'm not powerful enough? If you don't like me, I'll leave." Tantai Lien, who already felt that Chen Hao was obviously biased, instantly teared up when she heard his words. She felt as though her heart was being cut by a knife and said impulsively. After saying that, she flicked her sleeves and turned around, cough cough. Chen Hao didn't expect this woman to be so weak. He only said 2 sentences and she couldn't take it anymore? He didn't dare to hesitate and blocked in front of Tantai Lien. Without thinking, he said, "When did I say that I don't like you? Do I look like an irresponsible person?" "You." What Chen Hao didn't expect was that Tantai Lien's expression became even uglier. Her delicate body trembled as she stared at Chen Hao and said, "Let me go. I don't need you to be responsible for me. You don't need to be responsible for me. You only did it to save me, to save me." Chen Hao was slightly stunned and immediately understood what was going on. Fuck, she didn't say anything but what responsibility? Wasn't this clearly telling Tantai Lien that he had no feelings for her at all and only did it to save her? Well, Chen Hao's hands were like steel bars and iron hoops, stopping the struggling Tantai Lien. His expression finally became gentle and said, "Don't misunderstand. You should know that since I was willing to save you like that, naturally." Chen Hao paused for a moment. Because of his character, he couldn't say anything mushy in the end. He said directly, "Anyway, it's not what you think. It's just to be responsible. Also, when I said that you're not powerful enough, I wasn't talking about bullying or being biased. I just want you to understand that everything depends on strength. When you're powerful enough, you can take it back. I promise that I won't interfere. But a duel is a duel. Who allowed you to leave the star-picking sect? It's just a small matter and you're overturning the heavens. Why don't you have a duel to the death?" After all, Chen Hao was a smart person. Although he hadn't experienced any feelings, he found a way to deal with it as he spoke. His originally gentle voice became more and more domineering and strict. Tantai Lien gradually stopped struggling and turned her little face to one side. She bit her lip and didn't say anything. 3 days later, you two will duel. The winner will live in that palace. The loser will choose. If it's a tie, you two will live with me and fight however you want. When the winner is decided, you two will separate. Although your realm can't compare to hers, your aura is not weaker than hers. Don't say that I'm biased. The premise is that no one can kill me. No matter if it's me or you, the main focus is on cultivation. I don't want to be distracted by such a trivial matter." Chen Hao reached out and wiped away the tears on Tantai Lien's face, still speaking seriously. This guy already knew the strength of the two, especially Helian Wuzi's thoughts. Because of this, he said that if it was a tie, the two of them should live together. The two of them came to this stage more or less because of the relationship between Dongfang Jun and Li Yifeng. After they really got to know each other better and played around, it should be fine. Okay, you continue. I'll say the same thing to her again. As Chen Hao spoke, he carefully observed Tan Tai Lian's expression and guessed what she was thinking. After confirming that his words were effective, he spoke again. After he finished speaking, he turned and left. But, smack. You bastard. Ha. When Chen Hao left, he actually fiercely slapped and grabbed Tan Tai Lian's little butt. Amidst Tan Tai Lian's screams and curses, he laughed and disappeared. This is also considered a carrot stick policy? It feels pretty good. After stepping out of the palace, Chen Hao couldn't help but think proudly. After successfully taking a step forward, this guy felt that the problem of relationships wasn't as scary as he imagined. Didn't he successfully transfer it to cultivation? Part 1. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian. Chapter 300. Helian Wuzi's cultivation room was filled with a terrifying aura. Helian Wuzi looked at Chen Hao, who was standing opposite her, and snorted coldly. Her little face that was as cold as the moon had a trace of pride. Don't force me. Chen Hao stared at Helian Wuzi and said extremely gloomily. Even Chen Hao didn't expect that the girl who was so obedient and cute when talking to herself, which made Chen Hao feel gratified and fond of her, would come to him openly this time. When Chen Hao came looking for her with the same cold face and the same big stick from the beginning, wanting to deal with her like how he dealt with Tan Tai Lian, this little girl actually didn't fall for Chen Hao's tricks and directly said, "Talk after you beat me." Wasn't this a blatant provocation? Originally, when the two of them met last time, they agreed to give Helian Wuzi a chance to take revenge a year later. But obviously, after the little girl sensed Chen Hao's powerful aura, she couldn't wait any longer. He was only a half-step nascent soul, almost one realm lower, but he already had such a powerful aura. If Chen Hao was promoted to the nascent soul realm, wouldn't that be awesome? She was very clear about how amazing the improvement from a half-step nascent soul realm to the nascent soul realm was, and Chen Hao was a dignified man, an awesome character of his generation. Last time, when he didn't have any chance of winning, he had already escaped once. This time, with his amazing improvement, how could he still have the face to escape? There was only a battle. But what Chen Hao didn't expect was that the solitary sword technique, the mysteries of space, sword intent, and the true essence of the wind attribute were all used to the limit, but they still couldn't do anything to Helian Wuzi, who was in the late nascent soul realm. All kinds of concealment couldn't escape Helian Wuzi's senses. Not only that, Chen Hao was still faintly at a disadvantage. He was put into a difficult situation by the reincarnation power and vigorous true essence contained in Helian Wuzi's moves. Of course, the most important thing was that this little girl was slightly shameless. She'd actually utilized the essence of the martial technique that Chen Hao had passed down to her, the life-risking technique of harming oneself while harming the enemy, to the extreme. Even if Chen Hao executed a despicable, shameless, and wretched move, it was utterly ineffective against this little girl. In this situation, Chen Hao's big stick policy was like a dog biting a porcupine, unable to bite down. It was impossible not to be depressed, and he had to admit that Helian Wuzi's battle strength had already reached a rather terrifying realm, especially the reincarnation power contained within. Although it was very weak, it also increased Helian Wuzi's battle strength by a large margin. However, the most important reason was that Chen Hao couldn't really fight with this little girl. Come, I'm not afraid. The treasure sword that Helian Wuzi held was still the low-grade spirit weapon, the moonlight sword, that Chen Hao gave her. At this moment, she pointed at Chen Hao without the slightest bit of fear, and spoke with a trace of complacency and provocation. However, in her heart, she was incomparably shocked by Chen Hao's strength. He was only half a step into the nascent soul realm. It's fine if I don't use my ultimate move, but if I use it, at least I'll be seriously injured, at most I'll die. Do you really dare to take it? Who are you trying to scare? Just use it. Fuck. Looking at Helian Wuzi's fearless expression, Chen Hao was so angry that he cursed in his heart. Attack? How could he attack? Chen Hao wasn't joking. After the fusion of the platinum sky-splitting slash, it was fine if he didn't use it, but if he did use it, it would be an absolute killing move. Even he couldn't control it. Why would he use it? But could he let Helian Wuzi continue to be so arrogant? Wouldn't that turn the sky upside down? This absolutely couldn't happen. I don't believe that I can't deal with a little girl like you. This? Chen Hao gritted his teeth and said. At the same time, he directly kept the sword. His figure was like lightning, and in a flash, he appeared within 5 feet of Helian Wuzi, waving his palm out. Helian Wuzi casually slashed out with her sword, and at the same time, she said rather proudly, "This is your ultimate move?" Chen Hao couldn't be bothered to say anything more to this little lass. In this kind of stifled state, the only thing he could do was to completely immerse his mind into the battle. Using the least amount of effort to obtain the greatest reward, he had to wear this lass down until she was completely drained of all her strength. At this moment, Chen Hao was immersed in the essence of Tai Chi, using force to attack force, and turning as he wished. At the same time, he continuously tried to integrate his sword essence, wind attribute profoundness, and space attribute profoundness into it. Since a dead pig wasn't afraid of boiling water, then he would use a slow fire to boil it until it was soft, boom, boom, boom. Gradually, Chen Hao's ability to turn something rotten into something magical was displayed once again. The use of softness to overcome strength became more and more magical. Even the stifled feeling in Chen Hao's heart disappeared. His state of mind had imperceptibly reached the state of being as kind as water, clear and not lacking in quick-wittedness. His entire person was like a spinning ball that was sometimes fast and sometimes slow. His combination of attack and defense was flawless. Although Helian Wuzi was proud, she didn't let it go to her head. Being able to awaken the power of reincarnation, she was originally very intelligent. How could she not see Chen Hao's intention? Therefore, when Chen Hao used the strategy, the corners of her mouth curled up slightly, and she was secretly happy. The reason was very simple. Although she didn't know that she had awakened the power of reincarnation, ever since she awakened it, her breath was extremely long, and her recovery speed was even more shocking. This was her strong point. Although Chen Hao was a little abnormal in this aspect, Helian Wuzi believed that she definitely surpassed the current Chen Hao. How could she not be happy? As long as she also took it easy, the final winner would definitely be her. However, she wanted to take it easy, but Chen Hao didn't give her a chance at all. Once she relaxed a little, Chen Hao's obviously gentle attacks would become swift and fierce. Moreover, every move was shameless and aimed directly at her vital point, forcing her to use more and more energy. The stronger she was, the stronger Chen Hao would borrow, and the stronger she would have to bear. It was as if a vicious cycle had formed, and it was constantly worsening. Time passed by minute, and the entire cultivation room was filled with the flames of war and violent fluctuations. In the blink of an eye, almost an hour had passed. Helian Wuzi could clearly feel that her consumption was increasing. Fortunately, Chen Hao didn't seem to be any better. She could feel that Chen Hao's consumption was definitely not less than hers, and it might even be more. Moreover, she also gradually grasped a little of the profoundness of Chen Hao's unique skill, and it became much easier to deal with it. Therefore, she still had absolute confidence. The expression on her little face was rather proud. Helian Wuzi didn't know that Chen Hao, who was immersed in the profoundness of martial arts, was indeed incomparably shocked. One had to know that he was very clear about how abnormal his physical body's ability was, and also knew how strong his recovery ability was. However, Helian Wuzi's recovery speed in battle was even more astonishing than his. Chen Hao was certain that if he didn't rely on the profoundness of the unique skill to use his power to the extreme, the first to exhaust his energy would definitely be him, and not Helian Wuzi. After such a long time, he still couldn't take down Helian Wuzi. Especially when he saw Helian Wuzi's proud little face, Chen Hao couldn't control himself and became unable to calm down again. He couldn't wait to directly push this girl onto the ground and use all his strength to spank her, but as time passed, both of them were panting like oxen, drenched in sweat, and their faces were flushed red. Obviously, they had reached their own limits. Not only was there not much true vitality left in their Danton, even their essence, energy, and spirit had reached an extremely weak state. 2 hours. The battle had lasted for a whole 2 hours. It's time to make a move. Xianxia clenched his teeth and thought to himself, "No, I must win against him this time, or else I won't have another chance in the future. I must win, I must win." Hellion Wuxia clenched her teeth. The obsession in her heart made her break through her own limits. Persevering, she stabbed out her sword and attacked Xianxia again, aiming directly at Xianxia's chest. However, Hellion Wuxia suddenly cried out in surprise. What she didn't expect was that Xianxia actually didn't wave his palm this time. It was as if he had exhausted all his energy and allowed her sword to stab him, without dodging or avoiding. Immediately, Hellion Wuxia didn't have time to withdraw her hand. When the tip of the sword was only half a meter away from Xianxia's figure suddenly disappeared. At this very moment, when Xianxia was sure that Hellion Wuxia didn't have much energy left, he finally displayed the only ability that Hellion Wuxia couldn't respond to, which was to merge with everything in the world. This seemed to be the only ability that he could display when he was at his limit. Originally, in this narrow space of the cultivation room, the two people's terrifying energy almost enveloped all directions. It was absolutely impossible to merge with everything in the world. In an instant, they would be exposed, and they would be in an immobile state. But now, there was no need to worry. Pa 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 pa. A nightmarish sound suddenly appeared in Hellion Wuxia's ears. At the same time, what made Hellion Wuxia feel ashamed and inconsolable was that Xianxia, this shameless guy, actually displayed the ultimate skill that almost made her collapse back then when her energy was almost exhausted. Golden Snake's sticky hand. In just a moment, it entangled her tightly like a dogskin plaster. In the midst of Hellion Wuxia's screams again, the two people fell to the ground with a plop. "Stop, stop, stop. You scoundrel. Let's call it a draw." "Stop. A draw? In your dreams? It's only been 2 years and your wings have hardened? If I don't show my power, you really think I'm a sick cat?" Xianxia said arrogantly. The current him was not the him back then. In a situation where he had no energy, how could a weak and petite little girl compare to his majesty and might? Just by relying on his size, he could suppress this girl half to death. One hand unhesitatingly, shamelessly, and like a wandering viper, stimulated Hellion Wuxia's sensitive areas and disturbed her mind, causing her to be unable to gather the last bit of energy. The other hand, relying on the strength of his physical body, directly flipped Hellion Wuxia over. Lying on the ground, he began to spank her little but with a pa sound, especially when he thought of this girl's tsundere, complacent, and arrogance, which made Xianxia invisibly spank her to his heart's content. He was in a great mood. Hellion Wuxia was embarrassed and angry at the same time. At this moment, how could she still dare to let Xianxia continue? She could only shout loudly, "I admit defeat, admit defeat. I'll listen to you, okay? But you scoundrel. You dare to say that I'm a scoundrel? You're hurting me." Hellion Wuxia was so angry that tears came out of her eyes. Both her hands were tightly struggling to cover her chest. She was embarrassed and angry. Who pinched people like this? Didn't he know that a woman's chest could not be tempered? Chapter 301. Cough cough. Xianxia stopped a little awkwardly. What made him feel conflicted was that the current scene had happened many times when he was in the secular world in order to increase Hellion Wuxia's strength. But at that time, although Xianxia also enjoyed it a little, his state of mind was still calm. But now, firstly, Xianxia's body had completely matured. Secondly, he had no choice but to have that kind of experience with Tantai Lian in this life. The combination of these two factors directly caused Xianxia to be unable to return to the state of mind he had when he ravaged Hellion Wuxia. In addition, after more than 2 years, Hellion Wuxia's place had become even more majestic and alluring, causing this guy to involuntarily increase the strength of his kneading. Of course, the most important reason was that this guy was too arrogant just now. Fortunately, when Chen Hao was a little embarrassed, Helian Wuzi directly pushed him away. With one hand covering her full breasts and the other rubbing her little butt, she sat up and glared at Chen Hao. She said in an extremely free and easy manner, "Since I've lost, I won't make things difficult for you. I'm going to cultivate, you can leave." Chen Hao was stunned. Soon after, his eyes revealed a touch of imperceptible gratification. He smiled slightly and said, "Little Wu is still the most sensible, don't flatter me. After some time, I'll challenge you again. I'll look forward to it." After staring at Chen Hao and leaving, Helian Wuzi's free and easy expression suddenly changed. She didn't meditate to recover, but directly walked out of the cultivation room and into the bathroom. After quickly taking off her clothes, she lowered her head to check her red breasts that were kneaded. She cursed, "Bastard, bastard," but that cold gaze of hers wasn't cold at all. Instead, it carried a trace of joy after the reunion, as well as the feeling that made her body weak and hot just now. After coming out of Helian Wuzi's palace, Chen Hao directly returned to his own cultivation room. The battle lasted for a full 2 hours. Moreover, it was a battle in which no one could use their ultimate moves. Although it was stifling, Chen Hao still gained a lot. The first reason was that he had gained some understanding of the mysterious and magical power of reincarnation. The second reason was that Chen Hao was once again interested in the ultimate techniques of the martial arts world that he had almost forgotten. It had to be said that Helian Wuzi, this seemingly rude and unreasonable girl, was in fact a considerate little girl. She allowed Chen Hao to benefit greatly. Ultimate moves and trump cards are just bursts of power that surpass one's realm, not true strength. After all, once you use your trump card, you'll have to risk your life. It's fine if it's just one enemy, but what if it's a group? Chen Hao thought to himself. Just like the fused platinum sky-splitting slash, it was indeed very powerful. The power it could unleash in an instant was absolutely terrifying. Moreover, as Chen Hao's cultivation increased, the power of his attacks also increased. However, the number of times he could use it did not increase. Until now, Chen Hao's limit was only 10 times. This meant that one time would consume 1/10 of Chen Hao's energy. The platinum sky-splitting slash can only be used as a trump card as a last resort. If I rely too much on this move, I might suffer a great loss on that day. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye as Chen Hao and the other two cultivated. During this time, Elder Chuan and Elder Wu both came to look for Chen Hao once. After receiving Chen Hao's affirmation, the two of them were relieved. On the day of the duel, early in the morning, a mountain peak in the Xiaxing sect was packed with people. It could be said that almost all the disciples of the Xiaxing sect had gathered here. Even some elders were no exception. This mountain peak was specially used by the Xiaxing sect for disciples to duel. News of the duel between Tantai Lian and Helian Wuzi had already spread like wildfire in the Xiaxing sect. Whether it was the outer sect, inner sect, core disciples, or the elders and deacons of the Xiaxing sect, they were all paying close attention. Especially the young disciples. One had to know that no matter if it was Tantai Lian or Helian Wuzi, who caught up from behind, they were both first-rate beauties. More importantly, the two of them were progressing at a terrifying speed. It was hard not to cause a sensation. Wasn't Chen Hao a freak? However, Chen Hao's record had long been broken by the two girls. If not for the fact that Chen Hao had caused a sensation in the cultivation world and gained him great fame, his radiance would have been overshadowed by Helian Wuzi and Tantai Lian. How lively! We came so early. I wonder if we'll make a wasted trip. Who knows? It's good to be able to see the duel between the two beauties, but it doesn't matter if we don't. After all, it's leaving the Xiaxing sect. We should be able to see it. The duel that day was made in front of countless disciples. They can't go back on their word. I just don't know how Senior Brother Chen Hao will handle it. I'm afraid Senior Brother Chen Hao will be in a difficult position. It won't be easy to handle. Helian Wuzi and Tantai Lian's strength is too terrifying. Senior Brother Chen Hao is only a half-step nascent soul. I'm afraid it will be difficult to stop them. That's where you're wrong. The news has spread in the cultivation world. Senior brother Chen Hao is ranked 6th among the super geniuses of the Eastern Mainland, Western Mainland, and Southern Sea Islands. He's only a late-stage golden core cultivator, but he's also killed several top geniuses of the Southern Sea Islands' 9th-rank sections. It's said that they're all half-step nascent soul and nascent soul cultivators. You have to know that these top geniuses of the 9th-rank sects are very powerful. They can easily kill the late-stage nascent soul super geniuses of the Eastern Mainland. When was this news? Why haven't I heard about it? It only spread in the last 2 days. I only heard about it when I submitted the mission to the Immortal Dao Union. Senior brother Chen Hao is already known as the #1 inner disciple of the Eastern and Western Mainlands and the Southern Sea Islands. As long as he steps into the nascent soul realm, he'll be able to compete with Chu Qingtian, Gu Xing, and Wu Ruochen. He's even more famous than the 3 of them. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Just as the crowd was discussing, Helian Wuzi and Tantai Lian flew over a few hundred feet apart. However, what made everyone feel strange was that Chen Hao didn't come. What was even stranger was that Chen Hao didn't appear until the end of the battle. The battle between Helian Wuzi and Tantai Lian was very exciting. The power that they displayed was also very terrifying. However, everyone felt that it was a bit anticlimactic. Both of them didn't seem to want to fight with their lives on the line. From the beginning to the end, neither of them used any unexpected moves. Although Helian Wuzi was steadily suppressing Tantai Lian, neither of them seemed to be able to do anything to the other. After fighting for almost an hour, when Helian Wuzi suggested a draw, Tantai Lian, who was being suppressed, chose to agree. Just like that, it ended so casually and left so casually. Helian Wuzi naturally planned to do so because she had promised Chen Hao. She was wrong first. After all, she snatched someone else's palace. However, she didn't expect that Tantai Lian's combat power had increased so much compared to 2 months ago. Although this draw was the result that she wanted, it wasn't too unjust. Tantai Lian didn't know about Chen Hao and Helian Wuzi's secret plan. However, after the battle, she faintly felt that Helian Wuzi was holding back. Otherwise, she wouldn't have suggested a draw when she had the upper hand. However, even so, Tantai Lian didn't feel that she had taken advantage of Helian Wuzi. After all, under Chen Hao's restriction, she couldn't kill with all her might. Otherwise, she might not lose to Helian Wuzi even if she used her 7-star lost art to the extreme. The land of warmth, the tomb of heroes. Chen Hao had always remembered this sentence in his heart. Especially when he encountered relationship problems, he felt the same way. How could he not avoid it? It had to be said that this was Chen Hao's weakness. The result of their battle was already within Chen Hao's expectations. Therefore, he didn't look at it, because he didn't know how to get along with 2 women at the same time. Therefore, he ignored it and put it aside for the time being. He could only take 1 step at a time. Moreover, at this moment, the most important thing for him was to increase his strength and not waste his energy on this kind of love that could kill countless brain cells in a second. I'll give you the palace. I have my mountain peak. When Helian Wuzi and Tantai Lian returned to Chen Hao's mountain peak, Helian Wuzi hesitated slightly but still said this. A draw was fine, but she didn't want to live in the same palace as Tantai Lian. Not to mention that there was only 1 cultivation room, even if there were 2, she didn't want to see someone she didn't like all the time. I don't need you to give me that. I also have my mountain peak, Tantai Lian said without hesitation. Helian Wuzi looked at Tantai Lian, who was not inferior to her, and said, So you want to live in your mountain peak? That's good, I don't have to move. After saying that, she flew directly towards the palace. Tantai Lian didn't expect Helian Wuzi to do this. After being stunned for a moment, she immediately followed after her. Why are you following me? If you don't leave, why should I leave? I let you, you don't want it. I want it but you follow me. What do you mean? Helian Wuzi said unhappily. My meaning is clear. I don't care if you let me. I'll only leave if you leave. If you stay, why can't I stay? So boring. Then you stay. After saying that, Helian Wuzi ignored Tantai Lian. After entering the palace, she quickly kept her things and was about to leave. Wait. But at this moment, Tantai Lian called out. What? You stay. I'll take it back after a year. After saying that, Tantai Lian left directly. However, she didn't leave the mountain peak. Instead, she went to another palace. Helian Wuzi was speechless. Was there something wrong with this woman? 1 year later, 10 years later, don't even think about taking it away. In fact, it wasn't that Tantai Lian was crazy. She only did this when she was sure that Helian Wuzi wasn't playing with her. In fact, both of them knew that this wasn't a fight for the palace at all. Moreover, strictly speaking, Tantai Lian's strength was not as good as Helian Wuzi's. If Helian Wuzi really moved away, it would make her seem ungentlemanly. It had to be said that women were simply unpredictable creatures. Especially when women were fighting with other women, all kinds of trivial things could come out. Chen Hao, who was in seclusion, would never have thought of this result. In the blink of an eye, 4 months passed quickly. Chen Hao finally digested all his gains from the city in the sky. He already vaguely felt that his half-step nascent soul realm had reached its limit. The first chapter. I'm too slow in compiling chapters. I'm scratching my head. I've only written 1 chapter since the morning. The second chapter is at night. Wuxian will continue to work hard. When the plot goes well, I'll definitely work hard. Don't worry. I'm also working hard now. It's just that I can't get the output. I'm conflicted. If you like this work, you're welcome to come to Qidian. Chapter 302. Phew! Chen Hao exhaled slowly and slowly opened his eyes. His black eyes were clear and deep, but there was no light. This situation was a bit strange. Under normal circumstances, when a swordsman finished cultivating and opened his eyes, he would emit his peak state of sword essence from his eyes. In any case, Chen Hao, who had improved again, should not look so ordinary. He could not even sense any sword essence at all. After 4 months of closed-door cultivation, I didn't expect that the sword principle realm, which is the most difficult to improve, would be improved to the peak of the 3rd level of the sword principle. Moreover, it faintly contains the aura of the secular sword principle. Chen Hao thought to himself, I've reached my current limit. Naturally, Chen Hao clearly felt that whether it was his physical body, genuine essence, state of mind, essence, qi, and spirit, they had all reached the limit of Chen Hao's current realm. And the trace of the secular sword principle attribute that he had comprehended allowed his incomparably fierce sword essence to be in a wonderful state of restraint. In addition to his powerful soul power, Chen Hao was sure that as long as he wanted, no one would be able to sense that he was a swordsman. It's time. Chen Hao thought for a moment and said in a deep voice with a burning light in his eyes. After saying that, he disappeared from the cultivation room in a flash. He did not conceal his aura. In the sect, there was no need to be so cautious. Hey, where are they? For 4 months, Chen Hao focused on cultivation wholeheartedly. He did not pay attention to the situation of Helian Wuzi and Tantai Lian at all. And at this moment, relying on his rock-solid state of mind, he cut the Gordian knot and did indeed achieve a state of mind that was free of distractions. He originally thought that the 2 should be in the palace, but he did not expect that there was no aura of the 2 in the entire mountain peak, and the others were not there either. Just as Chen Hao was thinking, a familiar and extremely powerful aura suddenly enveloped Chen Hao. You finished your closed-door cultivation? You've improved a lot. Have you reached the perfection? Yuan Tyran's voice rang out in Chen Hao's ears from a few hundred kilometers away on Star-Seizing Peak. His voice carried a sliver of anticipation. It should be complete. Sovereign, I want to... Chen Hao said directly. He didn't have the ability to transmit his voice across hundreds of miles, but he knew that Yuan Tyran could hear him. Come to Star-Picking Peak quickly, Yuan Tyran said impatiently after receiving Chen Hao's affirmative reply. A few days after Chen Hao went into seclusion, he had already rushed back to the sect. As the leader of a sect, he was in charge of all the affairs of the entire sect. If there were no special circumstances, he would not leave. The reason he left was because of the upcoming intersect competition. It could be said that the intersect competition, which was held once every 10 years, was the biggest event in the Eastern continent. It was related to a sect's grade, ranking, luck, and most importantly, the sect's interests. None of the sects would look down on them. The competition was intense, far from what the 100 Empire rankings and Dragon Transformation rankings could compare to. After a while, Chen Hao arrived at Star-Picking Peak. Under the guidance of a deacon, he stepped into Star-Picking Hall. Disciple Chen Hao greets all the Grand Supreme Elders. Greetings, Sovereign. Greetings, Grand Supreme Elders. The moment Chen Hao entered the hall, he was locked on by many auras. However, he wasn't surprised. Before he stepped in, his powerful soul perception had already detected many powerful auras in the hall. There were a total of 37 of them. Among them, 6 Paths was the most terrifying. He was even stronger than the faction leader. He must be the legendary Supreme Elder. Numerous gazes and probing auras gathered on Chen Hao's body. How great was the pressure generated? Yuan Tairan and a Grand Supreme Elder were still trying to probe him. However, Chen Hao, who had a powerful soul, was as calm as a mountain. Not only was he not affected by the pressure, but he also cupped his fists respectfully. This changed the way they looked at Chen Hao. There was a hint of admiration and shock in their eyes. This was especially true for Yuan Tairan and the Grand Supreme Elder. Good. No wonder you were able to obtain the 6th place in the potential test among so many peerless geniuses. Moreover, you killed several peerless geniuses of the Southern Sea Archipelago. Very good. Yuan Tairan released a beam of energy and helped Chen Hao, who was bowing down, stand up. When he received the news, he couldn't believe it. They were only a 3rd-grade sect. Although they knew that the Mirage Desert was a once-in-a-century opportunity to train, they didn't dare to let any of their disciples participate. It was no different from asking for humiliation. However, at this moment, when he saw Chen Hao in person, he completely believed that Chen Hao had exceeded his expectations. I was just lucky. Sect Master, why did you call me here? Chen Hao had already guessed something when he saw such a big lineup, but he still pretended to be ignorant. It's a matter of honor for our entire sect. I didn't expect you to be able to make it in time. Are you sure you can trigger the heavenly punishment? It shouldn't be a problem, Chen Hao said. That's good. Yuan Tairan wasn't worried at all that Chen Hao would fail to trigger the heavenly punishment. Such a peerless genius, especially one who had walked step by step from the mortal world to where he was now, would definitely have a stronger temperament than those super geniuses blessed by the heavens. He wouldn't allow anything to go wrong. He directly said, "You should know about the intersect competition that is held every 10 years, right?" Seeing Chen Hao nod, Yuan Tairan continued, "This intersect competition is the biggest event in the Eastern Continent's cultivation world. It's related to the sect's ranking, fortune, and fundamental interests. The conditions for participation are to be above the nascent soul stage and below the age of 40. Although you're half a step away from the nascent soul stage, as long as you trigger the heavenly punishment, you'll qualify for the competition. This time, with you, Helian Wuzi, Tantai Lian, and several new core disciples, our star-picking sect will be able to contend with a 5th-rank sect in terms of numbers. As for your combat strength, Helian Wuzi said she's no match for you. Is that true?" Chen Hao hadn't expected Helian Wuzi to be brought up. He hesitated for a moment, then said, "It should be about the same. Her battle with me wasn't a life-and-death battle, so I can't be too sure. No need to be humble. Even if you're on par with her, that's only because you're half a step away from the nascent soul stage. Once you step into the nascent soul stage, your strength will increase by 2 times, or even more." Yuan Tairan then gave Chen Hao a simple explanation of the intersect competition, as well as the star-picking sect's disciples who were qualified to participate. Including Chen Hao, Helian Wuzi, and Tantai Lian, there were a total of 31 disciples in the star-picking sect who were qualified. As for the other 28 people, Chen Hao only knew his senior sister Yi Feishue, whom he had befriended previously. The strongest one was Long Yukong, who was ranked first among the core disciples. He was also the only one who had stepped into the half-step incarnation realm. Yi Feishui and the other three had stepped into the peak of the advanced nascent soul stage. It had to be said that the star-picking sect had developed at an unprecedented speed in the past 2 years. Especially after the 7 Stars Grotto Heaven was completely opened, it was even more shocking. In a few more years, the number of young experts in the star-picking sect would definitely increase exponentially. Moreover, what surprised Chen Hao was that although the competition was cruel and fierce, there was basically no threat of death. Thinking about it, this was expected. After all, the disciples who were qualified to participate were all geniuses that their respective sects had spent countless efforts to nurture. They were all the future pillars of the sect. Who would be willing to let them fall in the competition? Moreover, the competition format was completely different from an ordinary competition. This made Chen Hao look forward to it even more. There are only 2 months left. The others are already in seclusion in the cultivation room specially created by the Grand Elder. When can you trigger the divine punishment? Yuan Tairan asked Chen Hao after a brief introduction. Now, Chen Hao said, you don't need to prepare? The divine punishment is a nightmare for many cultivators. Although you don't have a big problem, you can't let your guard down. Only you know whether you can trigger the divine punishment. Once you trigger it, no one can help you. You can only bear it yourself. Moreover, with your battle strength, the divine punishment you trigger will definitely be much stronger than ordinary cultivators. That's right. Chen Hao, are you sure there's no problem with your state of mind? Elder Chuan couldn't help but ask. He had seen with his own eyes how Chen Hao had fallen into a demonic trap after learning about Helian Wuxi and Tantai Lian. Therefore, he didn't expect Chen Hao to step into the nascent soul stage before the intersect competition. However, in 4 months, Chen Hao's aura was indeed as heavy as a mountain. He couldn't sense any flaws. However, for the sake of caution, he still reminded him. It shouldn't be, you have to be sure. The divine punishment is no small matter. If your state of mind isn't in a perfect state, it's very likely that an accident will happen. Although your aura is already very heavy and stable, your speed of advancement is still too fast. Moreover, forget it, think about it carefully. Elder Chuan wanted to mention Chen Hao's emotional problems, but he stopped himself in time. He knew that it was impossible for anyone to be completely free of their inner demons. If Chen Hao had already suppressed his inner demons, there would be side effects if he mentioned it. There's no need to think about it. I came out of seclusion to trigger the divine punishment. I can feel that I've reached my limits in all aspects. Don't worry, nothing will happen, Chen Hao said with a determined gaze. After he finished speaking, he cupped his fists and said to the sect leader and everyone else, I'll take my leave. Kid, don't tell me you're going back to your mountain to trigger the divine punishment? Elder Chuan hurriedly said. Tantai Lian triggered the divine punishment the last time and almost destroyed the entire mountain. Fortunately, we discovered it in time. Then where should I trigger it? I'll take you there, Elder Chuan said. Let's all go and take a look. It's rare for our Zhaixing sect to have the divine punishment descend several times in a year. Grand Supreme Elders, I'll have to trouble you to specially create a cultivation room for him. Yuan Tairan said respectfully to the 6 Grand Elders who didn't say a word. They only narrowed their eyes and seemed to be looking at Chen Hao with gratification. Old Man also wants to know how strong this kid's divine punishment is. Let's go take a look first. As long as this kid satisfies the old man can let him go to the old man's grotto heaven and let him. The leader of the 6 Grand Elders suddenly said with a smile. It can't be. Everyone, including Yuan Tairan, widened their eyes when they heard the Grand Elder's words. Second update. Today is the second update. Everyone don't wait. When the time comes, Dark Mountain will definitely erupt. If it can't erupt, there's nothing we can do. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian. Come and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 303. All disciples, listen up. Our disciple Chen Hao is about to trigger divine punishment on Waterfall Peak. Please make way. Inner and outer disciples may come and watch, but do not make any noise or come within 5 kilometers. As elder technique imparting took the lead and led Chen Hao to the peak where the outer waterfall of the star-picking sect was located, his majestic voice spread far and wide like the evening drum and morning bell. It resounded in the space hundreds of kilometers around the star-picking sect, causing a huge commotion in the entire star-picking sect in an instant. Even in the sect, divine punishment only appeared a few times a year. Although divine punishment was directed at the person who triggered it, the mysterious aura it contained was a rare opportunity for disciples who had not experienced divine punishment to comprehend it. It was very beneficial for improving their state of mind. Last time, Tantai Lian, who did not know much about the cultivation world, had foolishly triggered divine punishment directly. Not only had she almost destroyed Chen Hao's peak, but she had also wasted an opportunity for many disciples to comprehend and learn. This time, she could not waste it. The outer heavenly waterfall is a cultivation paradise for our star-picking sect. It contains extremely profound laws. What's even more amazing is that not only can it withstand the bombardment of heavenly tribulation energy, it can also absorb a certain amount of energy from the heavenly tribulation to grow. Hundreds of years ago, the outer waterfall was only 9,000 feet high. Now that it has undergone the baptism of divine punishment by our disciples, it has grown to 10,000 feet. When elder technique imparting brought Chen Hao to the outer waterfall, he gazed at the majestic waterfall and said, "It's a pity that it hasn't grown in the past 100 years. What's the reason?" Hearing elder technique imparting's words, Chen Hao asked curiously. The reason is very simple. At this moment, the old man who was the head of the great elders smiled and said, "Everything in the world has spirituality, and things that can grow naturally have a trace of intelligence. They constantly absorb the energy of the world to maintain their own operations. In fact, the outer waterfall is the same as us cultivators. It has grown to its limit. Only by breaking through the bottleneck can it continue to grow. 3,000 feet is its barrier. If it is unable to break through, then with the passage of time, it will gradually disappear in the long river of history." Hearing the Supreme Elder's words, Chen Hao pondered for a moment. He had once tested the outer sky waterfall here. Although it was far from being comparable to the 90,000 feet Spirit Spring waterfall in the small cultivation cave he had encountered in the Sky City, it had mysteries that the Spirit Spring waterfall didn't have. It could change its trajectory in an instant, and it also had a powerful energy backlash. Although Chen Hao's cultivation was still very low at that time, when he thought of the mysteries it contained, and the Supreme Elder's words at this moment, Chen Hao's interest was once again aroused. Moreover, regardless of whether the outer sky waterfall could become stronger or not, for Chen Hao, it was absolutely a holy land for practicing the mental cultivation method of carving. "All right, little guy, you can start now," the great elder said. Phew! Chen Hao sat cross-legged on the peak next to the source of the outer sky waterfall. He breathed a long sigh of relief and slowly closed his eyes. Although Chen Hao had absolute confidence in passing through the legendary divine punishment, he would not let his guard down. This was because, under the advice of the mysterious existence, he wanted to try a dangerous but most beneficial method. Several figures appeared as fast as lightning within a radius of 10 miles around the waterfall peak. Countless outer disciples, inner disciples, and deacons were staring at Chen Hao, who was sitting on the peak from afar. One of the figures was Dong Fong Ting. At this moment, her aura was obviously much stronger than half a year ago. She had risen to the half-step nascent soul stage. In the star-picking sect, she was not outstanding. Her talent could only be considered average, or even below average. She could not be compared to the monstrous geniuses like Chen Hao, Helian Wuzi, and Tantai Lian. Otherwise, at her age, she would have stepped into the nascent soul stage long ago. In half a year's time, she was able to advance so quickly because Chen Hao had specially given her a large number of elixirs and primordial crystal stones. At this moment, she stared blankly at Chen Hao's figure. There was no envy or jealousy in her eyes, only relief and happiness. Although she was a senior sister in name, Chen Hao, Dongfang Jun, and the rest were the closest juniors in her eyes. How could she not be happy to see them surpass her one by one? In particular, Mo Yui and Dongfang Jun had stepped into the Seven Stars Grotto Heaven for 6 months but had not come out. What did this mean? It meant that they were likely to be like Tantai Lien, breaking through level by level to the higher levels of the Seven Stars Grotto Heaven. When they came out, they would not be much worse than her, and no one was more certain than Dongfang Ting that this was brought about by Chen Hao. That once tender and immature youth had already grown into someone she could look up to, someone she could even consider as her backer. Hiss. After a short 10 minutes, Chen Hao suddenly opened his eyes. At this moment, the aura around his body blossomed without restraint, and in an instant, the full, round and pure essence, energy, and spirit condensed into a seemingly solid smoke signal that shot straight into the sky. His true essence circulated at the maximum speed, his mind's perception was pushed to the limit, his sword intent was raised to the limit, and all the heavenly Tao laws he had comprehended were pushed to the limit. His physical strength was stretched to the limit. There was no doubt that at this moment, Chen Hao had pushed himself to the limit in every aspect. Only when he was at the limit could he trigger the heavenly punishment. What a vigorous true essence! What a condensed essence, energy, and spirit. Peak of the fourth heaven of the sword Tao. Peak of the initial success of the wind attribute and the initial success of the space attribute. In just an instant, the moment Chen Hao released his aura without restraint, the 6 Grand Elders, Yuan Tairan, and the inner court elders all widened their eyes in shock. They looked at each other in shock. No matter who it was, they all saw the disbelief in each other's eyes. Good. Old Man had long guessed that this little fellow was not so simple. The leader of the Grand Elders could not help but say with a touch of surprise, but I did not expect that he would still exceed Old Man's expectations. This is our star-picking sect. No, even in the entire Eastern continent, this is a genius that is hard to come by in 1,000 years. Listen up, as long as there are no accidents, this little fellow's future achievements will definitely exceed all of our imaginations. Remember, do not restrict him in any way. If necessary, even if you use the entire sect's strength to nurture him, do not hesitate. Tairan, when this little fellow succeeds in his tribulation, you will personally ask him. No matter what he wishes for, you must help him achieve it. Let him devote himself to cultivation without any distractions. Yes. Yuan Tairan replied without any hesitation. As the leader of a sect, he had never been so shocked before. The extreme aura that Chen Hao displayed at this moment had thoroughly shocked everyone. This was even more shocking than when Yuan Tairan heard that Chen Hao had killed the top genius of the South Sea Islands' 9th-rank sect. He simply could not imagine how Chen Hao, who had only stepped into the cultivation world for 2 years, had cultivated to such a level. This had nothing to do with the realm. Although Helian Wuzi's realm had shocked him, it was far from being comparable to Chen Hao's. After Chen Hao released his aura, the energy of heaven and earth within a radius of hundreds of miles began to fluctuate violently and surged to the top of the waterfall peak. This was the precursor of the condensation of heaven's punishment. It was only a premonition, but it was enough to let the top experts of the star-seizing house know that Chen Hao's heavenly punishment was the most powerful of all the heavenly punishment they had ever seen from a half-step nascent soul disciple. It looks like it's not much worse than the heaven's punishment triggered by a half-step incarnation realm cultivator. The 6 supreme elders, Yuan Tairan, and the elder of imparting techniques could not help but think to themselves. Under normal circumstances, the range of the heaven's punishment triggered by a half-step nascent soul disciple would not exceed 200 miles. However, Chen Hao had just started and the range of the heaven's punishment had already advanced to 500 miles and was still increasing. However, no one was too surprised. After all, the aura that Chen Hao had just displayed and his combat strength could cause such a disturbance. To be able to reach 800 miles was comparable to the heaven's punishment triggered by a half-step incarnation realm supergenius. As the energy of heaven and earth gathered, The tribulation cloud emitting a terrifying pressure condensed in the void above Chen Hao's head. It covered the sky and the sun, causing the wind and clouds to change color. Streaks of azure lightning flashed within it, causing the pressure it emitted to become more and more terrifying. There was no need for instructions at all. Under the huge pressure, the disciples of the Xianxia sect kept retreating further and further away. Some of the disciples who had never seen others trigger the heaven's punishment were shocked, but only shocked. However, some of the disciples who had seen their fellow disciples trigger the heaven's punishment were extremely shocked. No one thought that the heaven's punishment triggered by the half-step nascent soul Chen Hao would be so powerful at the beginning. Time continued and the tribulation cloud was still rapidly increasing. 500 miles, 600 miles, 700 miles, 800 miles. When the range of the heaven's punishment reached 800 miles, Yuan Tairan, the 6 supreme elders, and other powerful figures all widened their eyes. At this time, it was comparable to the heaven's punishment of the incarnation realm, and it was the heaven's punishment of a super genius. However, what made them gasp was that the heaven's punishment did not seem to be stopping. It continued to spread and spread. When it reached 900 miles, it finally stopped. The people who were gasping finally breathed a sigh of relief. However, they looked at Chen Hao with deep worry in their eyes. Even the Supreme Elder, who was the leader, frowned at this moment. It was obvious that the power of the heaven's punishment had far exceeded their expectations. Supreme Elder Bai, can Chen Hao withstand it? Yuan Tairan looked at the leader of the Supreme Elders and asked worriedly. He was extremely regretful. Originally, they were not worried about Chen Hao's heaven's punishment at all. After all, Chen Hao's strength was there for all to see. No matter how strong the heaven's punishment was, how strong could it be? If he did not use any protection and relied on himself to withstand the heaven's punishment, he would benefit more. But now, Part 1, I want to discuss something with everyone and ask for their opinions. Those who have read Wuxian's previous 2 books should understand that the style of this book is completely different. But now, Wuxian realized that the most suitable characters for Wuxian to write were still the main characters who were wretched, shameless, and hooligan. Wuxian felt stifled when he had to write about real and ordinary emotions. So, Wuxian wanted to subtly change the main characters' personalities. Would everyone agree? This is because of the protagonist's personality. Wuxian can't let go, and the plot is greatly limited. I really don't know what's going on. Logically speaking, Wuxian is very pure, should be the most suitable for a pure protagonist. But I can't find that kind of feeling to my heart's content. If the protagonist's personality is slightly changed to be more vulgar and free, it might be more suitable for Wuxian. Does everyone agree? Brothers and sisters, please leave comments. To be continued. If you like this book, you are welcome to come to Qidian. Chapter 304. The old man can't be sure. His divine punishment is beyond the half-step to incarnation realm. Even the old man has never heard of it. We were careless. If we had known, we would have prepared a set of armor for him. Now, we can only depend on him. The Supreme Elder said with a frown. His excited expression had turned into deep worry. It would be a pity if such a peerless genius died under the divine punishment. Once the divine punishment was triggered, no one could help or interrupt it. If they interrupted it forcefully, the consequences would be even more severe. The only thing they could do was to resign themselves to fate. Whether they could successfully pass the divine punishment depended on Chen Hao himself. As the energy of heaven and earth within 1,000 miles gathered crazily, dark clouds rolled and covered the sky. It was as if the heavenly dog had swallowed the sun, causing the entire Xianxia sect to fall into darkness. The terrifying pressure of the divine punishment had already forced the weaker disciples to retreat dozens of miles away from the waterfall peak. Even so, many people were still retreating. Only Chen Hao, who was standing on the peak, was surrounded by dazzling true core strength. Everyone's eyes were focused on him. At this moment, Chen Hao raised his head and stared at the tribulation clouds in the sky. His extraordinarily handsome and angular face was filled with a firm expression, and his black eyes were like dazzling stars and sharp sword lights. His clothes and long hair fluttered with the wind. Naturally, he was exuding a domineering arrogance. "Are you very strong? No matter how strong you are, Chen Hao will take it." Sensing the terrifying aura of the tribulation clouds, Chen Hao said in his heart. When Chen Hao triggered the heavenly punishment, treasure-hunting sword Spirit and Itoda had already hidden themselves in the depths of Chen Hao's soul. Moreover, a powerful seal had been placed on them by a mysterious existence. Because the divine punishment represented the test of heaven's power. Undergoing the baptism of the divine punishment was the refinement and purification of the soul and body. Therefore, Ito Ta, the treasure hunter sword spirit, and the mysterious existence in Chen Hao's soul were considered impurities in Chen Hao's soul to the divine punishment. The 5 divine beasts in the 5 elements sword were fine. Chi Chi Chi, within the terrifying tribulation clouds, the arcs of lightning became more and more violent. Clearly, it was time for the heavenly punishment to descend. But, what is this brat doing? Why haven't you taken out your sword yet? Could it be that he still wants to resist? Isn't that just courting death? Yuan Tairen, Grand Elder, and the others were originally worried about whether Chen Hao could survive such a terrifying heavenly punishment. However, what was even more unexpected was that just as the heavenly punishment was about to descend, Chen Hao's figure actually stood as straight as a sword, not moving at all. It was clear that he wanted to resist the heavenly punishment. Originally, it was not strange for a man to resist the heavenly punishment. After all, a man's body was completely tempered, unlike a woman whose body parts could not be tempered. However, not many people dared to do so. After all, the stronger one was, the stronger Tian Fa would be. No one dared to play around with their own life, and no one could be 100% sure that they would succeed. Therefore, under normal circumstances, when the heavenly punishment descended, one would use one's strongest attack and defense to reduce the damage that the heavenly punishment would inflict on one's body. However, although Chen Hao's aura had soared to the limit, his current expression clearly showed that he had no intention of attacking. The heavenly punishment was already so terrifying, yet Chen Hao still wanted to resist it. How could they not be shocked? However, no matter how shocked they were, it was useless. Gotcha. The sky was suddenly torn apart, and the ink-black tribulation clouds flashed with arcs of lightning. At this moment, a terrifying lightning serpent, dozens of feet thick, blasted towards Chen Hao with an aura that could destroy heaven and earth. It was also at this moment that Chen Hao raised his head to the sky and roared. His palms faced upwards as he welcomed the lightning beam. There was not a single trace of energy being emitted. There was only his mind, all his true essence, all his essence, all the mysteries of the laws, all of them erupting within Chen Hao's body. Every cell in his body was stimulated to the limit, and his blood began to burn. Rumble! The thick lightning pillar illuminated the entire space, and the moment it touched Chen Hao's body, an earth-shattering boom erupted. All the disciples who had seen others trigger the heavenly punishment could not help but cry out in shock. Dong Fong Ting was filled with fear, her face pale as she closed her eyes, not daring to look again. Even the sect master, Grand Elder, and the others had their mouths wide open, holding their breaths. No one was not nervous. Life and death was a matter of an instant, and no matter what the result was, they had to face it. He withstood it. Chen Hao actually withstood it. In the minds of many experienced disciples, Chen Hao would very likely be reduced to ashes the moment he resisted the heavenly punishment. However, they saw the 1,000-foot waterfall suddenly reverse and disappear into thin air. They saw Chen Hao raise his hands to the sky, as if he wanted to raise the heavens, and stand proudly within the dazzling lightning pillar. At this moment, everyone heaved a sigh of relief, but they immediately tensed up again. Because withstanding the heavenly punishment did not mean that he had successfully passed the heavenly punishment, because the heavenly punishment was still ongoing, and the real test was yet to come. The reason why they heaved a sigh of relief was because now that Chen Hao could withstand it, he could clearly test his limits and challenge them. When he could no longer bear it, he would naturally slash the heavenly punishment with his sword. If he could destroy the heavenly punishment, it would be a success, but if he could not, it would still be a failure. Within the heavenly punishment light pillar, Chen Hao's soul and physical body were enduring unimaginable pain, but Chen Hao gritted his teeth and persevered, his heart like a boulder, unmoved. What was pain? No matter how great the pain was, he could endure it. As long as it could increase his strength, he was willing to endure it every day. With the undying bloodline in his physical body, as long as he was not instantly reduced to ashes, he dared to try no matter how severe the injuries were. His soul, he, who had fused the souls of 2 lifetimes, had experienced the crushing pain of his soul before anyone else had experienced any soul pain. He had almost been reduced to dust. How strong was a mutated fusion soul? He himself did not know. At least, at this moment, he could clearly sense that he had not reached his limit. As for the powerful pressure of the heavenly punishment, it had the least impact on Chen Hao. This was due to the palace in the Sky City. However, what Chen Hao did not expect was that after persevering for a few seconds in the terrifying heavenly punishment, his rock-solid state of mind suddenly had a huge fluctuation. At the same time, images appeared in Chen Hao's mind, Helian Wuzi, Xiaoyu, Tantai Lian, Chen Shui, and it was only for a moment. Before Chen Hao could react, he fell into confusion and illusion. When a blood arrow spurted out from Chen Hao's mouth, countless people could not help but cry out in alarm. Immediately, Chen Hao's eyes, nose, ears, and even every pore, in the instant Chen Hao's mind was lost, blood hissed out. Heart demon! Without a doubt, the emotional problems that Chen Hao thought he had completely suppressed in the depths of his heart were dug out by the mysterious heavenly punishment, directly causing him to fall into an illusion. In this situation, if Chen Hao did not use brute force, but used a defensive attack to break through the heavenly punishment, it could be completely avoided. But to withstand it like this, it required a very perfect state of mind, a flawless state of mind. Without the control of one's mind, one's body and soul were instantly lost. If it was an ordinary person, they would have been directly destroyed. Fortunately, Chen Hao's body and soul were far superior to ordinary people. Even without the control of his mind, he only bled from the 7 orifices. His body was still as straight as a sword. Moreover, under the terrifying heavenly punishment, Chen Hao's true origin and elemental mysteries, after losing the control of his mind, all stagnated. But the sword intent contained in his body became even fiercer at this moment, and strangely changed according to the changes in Chen Hao's state of mind in the illusion, constantly attacking the barrier of Chen Hao's swordsmanship realm. In just a few seconds, there were faint signs of a breakthrough. However, under the cover of the terrifying aura of heavenly punishment, even the Supreme Elder and the others could not sense any aura of Chen Hao. The only thing they could see was that Chen Hao was bleeding from the 7 orifices, but Chen Hao's still straight figure shocked everyone. This strange situation was completely beyond their scope of understanding. After 5 minutes, the light beam of heavenly punishment suddenly disappeared. Voila! At this moment, it was as if the 1,000-foot waterfall and the bright sunlight had disappeared into thin air, pouring down. Success! Success! He actually succeeded. This. Yuan Tairan, the Supreme Elder, and the others quickly flew toward Chen Hao. At this moment, with the disappearance of heavenly punishment, Chen Hao's illusion also disappeared, and he regained consciousness. What made him feel a little scared was that at this moment, whether it was his physical body, soul, or mind, they were all severely injured and extremely weak. This was definitely a life-and-death situation that Chen Hao had never experienced before. However, at this moment, he was still standing proudly, straight as a sword. Moreover, a dense aura slowly rose from his body, and like a warm current, it automatically grew in every cell of his body. His injuries were quickly recovering, and the golden core in his dantian had disappeared. In its place was a nascent soul, emitting a dreamy glow. A small nascent soul, a naked nascent soul. Although small, it was like a miniature version of Chen Hao. It had all the parts and functions, and it was much more beautiful than Chen Hao, because it was dazzling with 7 colors. Nascent soul realm. The legendary seven-colored nascent soul. Chen Hao could clearly feel that his physical body was undergoing a shocking change. Although his soul was already very strong, Chen Hao's perception quickly spread out under the cover of this dense aura. 500 miles, 800 miles, 1,500 miles, 1,500 miles, haha. Little guy, congratulations. Chen Hao, good job. Congratulations, congratulations. The sect master, supreme elder, and inner sect elders were the first to arrive, and they all praised and congratulated Chen Hao with joy. Immediately, the outer sect elders and some disciples with higher cultivation flew over, including Dong Fong Ting. Second update. Dark Mountain will continue to work hard. I hope that my brothers and sisters will thank the friends who posted the reviews. When Dark Mountain said to change his personality, he did not mean to completely change it into a wretched one. That would definitely not be possible. I just want to change it slightly, and change it naturally. I will not let everyone feel that it is too out of place. My innate arrogance will not change. Thank you again, and I hope that everyone will give me more suggestions and post more reviews. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidian. Chapter 305. Little guy, don't take any elixirs. The injuries of the heavenly punishment will heal on their own. Once you step into the nascent soul stage, your body, soul, and mind will all be greatly improved. Later, old man will send you into my grotto heaven so that you can comprehend and stabilize your cultivation. Thank you very much, Grand Elder. Chen Hao said. Let's go to the star-picking peak first. Let's go. Yuan Tairan waved his hand and sent out a beam of energy that wrapped around Chen Hao. Creak, creak. At this moment, a strange sound suddenly came from the waterfall peak, causing everyone to turn around. It's growing so fast. When the heavenly waterfall suddenly grew at an astonishing speed, the entire mountain trembled and emitted a mysterious and strange aura. This feeling was similar to a cultivator's cultivation level. Everyone stared in shock at the rapidly growing waterfall peak. Not only was the mountain taller, it was also thicker. The growth of the mountain directly caused the height and width of the waterfall to increase rapidly. In just a few minutes, the entire mountain had grown from 1,000 feet to 1,300 feet. Only then did it slow down and gradually stop. Yuan Tairan and the others were shocked and also very puzzled. Although Chen Hao's heavenly punishment was unbelievably powerful and completely beyond their imagination, that was only for a half-step nascent soul stage heavenly punishment. This was especially true for the Grand Elders. When they broke through from the nascent soul stage to the creation stage, the heavenly punishment they triggered was far stronger than Chen Hao's. But even then, they were unable to make the heavenly waterfall grow. What they did not know was that Chen Hao was even more shocked. The moment the heavenly waterfall began to grow, a strange and weak aura faintly appeared in Chen Hao's heart, as if connecting Chen Hao with the heavenly waterfall. This feeling was very clear, just like the telepathy he had established with Xia Yuyu. It was very mysterious. What was going on? Chen Hao was very puzzled. Could it be that because of his heavenly punishment, he had established some kind of connection with the heavenly waterfall? Even when Yuan Tairan and the others brought Chen Hao back to the star-picking peak several hundred kilometers away, Chen Hao could clearly sense it. Moreover, he didn't need to use any of his senses. It was only when the utmost exalted elder sent him into his paradise that he was cut off. Phew! So this is the grotto heaven created by a creation realm expert? Chen Hao's eyes carried a trace of shock as he sized up the surrounding space, and he exclaimed in his heart. Chen Hao seemed to be in a transparent barrier of light. All he could see was the endless night sky and terrifying spatial storms. The entire transparent barrier was covered with dense inscriptions that slowly flowed, as if it was constantly in the spatial storms, refining extremely pure energy of the world, causing the spiritual qi of the world to be extremely dense. Furthermore, there was still a trace of the aura of the Great Elder's comprehension of the laws of the world. This should be the space outside of the restrictions of the laws of the world of cultivation? Who knows how much true yuan and spiritual treasures were used to create this grotto heaven? I only have 1 month, I can't waste it. When the utmost exalted elder said that he was going to enter his grotto heaven to cultivate, Chen Hao saw the shock and envy on the faces of Yuan Tairan and the others. Chen Hao did not want to waste such a rare opportunity. After a brief moment of surprise, he sat cross-legged and slowly closed his eyes, immersing himself in cultivation. Chen Hao, who had just stepped into the nascent soul realm, first had to stabilize his cultivation and refine his true yuan. He had to let his weak rainbow nascent soul reach a full state. The utmost exalted elder's grotto heaven was filled with extremely pure energy of the world. There was no need to refine it to absorb it. However, after a short 4 hours, Chen Hao opened his eyes and frowned slightly. He murmured, "I didn't expect to reach the limit of the longevity art so quickly. I only have 1 month, what should I do?" Chen Hao had long planned to cultivate other inner force techniques after stepping into the nascent soul realm. After all, when he was in the golden core realm, he already felt that the longevity art could no longer satisfy him. However, he did not expect it to come so quickly. His nascent soul had not reached a full state, but the energy it contained had already reached the limit of what the longevity art could activate. After pondering for a moment, Chen Hao was a little conflicted. In the past 2 years, his progress could be described as rapid. He had also obtained many secret manuals and unique skills. However, among the unique skills of internal strength, the strongest one was the 7 Stars Sutra. However, the 7 Stars Sutra was at best a top earth-level technique. Although he had not started to cultivate it, Chen Hao vaguely knew that even if he cultivated the 7 Stars Sutra to the extreme, it would not be able to bear his legendary rainbow nascent soul. Through Ito Tai, Chen Hao understood that the rainbow nascent soul was an extremely rare nascent soul in the cultivation world. There might not be one among hundreds of millions of genius disciples. It was 5 times stronger than an ordinary nascent soul. Once Chen Hao refined his nascent soul to the peak of the early stage, his vital essence would be 5 times stronger than an ordinary peak of the early stage of the nascent soul realm. This was under the premise that Chen Hao's abnormal physical body was ignored. This also meant that Chen Hao had to work 5 times or even 10 times harder than an ordinary person to reach the same level of vital essence. Of course, the strength was not the same, but the level was the same. If I had known before coming in, I would have taught the sect master a high-level inner force technique. I think he would definitely not refuse. Chen Hao thought to himself. In the sect, disciples in the nascent soul realm would not be taught heaven-level techniques under normal circumstances. Firstly, heaven-level techniques were precious. Secondly, even those in the nascent soul realm could not really comprehend heaven-level techniques. You don't have to change the technique now. After all, the time is too short. No matter how talented you are, if you change the technique, you won't be able to improve your strength in a month. It will even be difficult to recover to your original level. You can try the primary principle of Tao. Just as Chen Hao was thinking about whether to cultivate the 7 Stars Sutra, the mysterious existence in his mind suddenly said, "Primary principle of Tao? That's an absolute technique?" Chen Hao asked, a little surprised. It's not an absolute technique. However, although the primary principle of Tao is only a general introduction to the 3,000 great Daoists, it also contains the essence of Taoism. The 3,000 great Daoists are also derived from the essence of Taoism. If you can comprehend a little of the primary principle of Tao, you will definitely be able to transform your low-level absolute technique. Even if it's just the tip of the iceberg, you will benefit greatly. I'm only suggesting. The decision is yours, the mysterious existence said. When Chen Hao had embarked on a cultivation path that was completely out of his control, he had already decided to let Chen Hao develop on his own and would not interfere with his cultivation. If not for the fact that Chen Hao was troubled by this problem, he would definitely not have mentioned it. That's the only way. The mysterious existence's words made Chen Hao understand that there was indeed a great risk in changing the absolute technique now. After all, he would only be in the grotto heaven for a month. A month later, all the disciples in the Xiaoxing sect who were qualified to participate in the inter-sect competition would set off. Man follows earth, earth follows heaven, heaven follows Tao. Tao begets 1, 1 begets 2, 2 begets 3, 3 begets all things. Chen Hao collected his thoughts and recited the primary principle of Tao over and over again in his mind. Even if Chen Hao was extremely intelligent and had superb comprehension, he would not be able to comprehend any of the profound and abstruse words in a short time. However, Chen Hao's temperament was extremely tenacious, arrogant, and unyielding. The more he could not understand something, the more he wanted to understand it. Once he got into it, he would not stop. Obviously, this character was influenced by his previous life. Otherwise, he would not have become a powerful person who stood at the peak of countless fields. Time passed day by day. On the 7th day, Chen Hao still had not comprehended anything. However, he seemed to have sunk into a state of madness. The recitation in his mind became louder and louder. He did not care about the energy circulating around his body at all. He also forgot that his goal was to stabilize his realm as soon as possible and refine his nascent soul to a full state. Hiss, hiss, hiss. On the 20th day, Chen Hao, whose aura had not changed at all, suddenly emitted a profound and abstruse aura. Although it was only a sliver, it attracted the pure energy of heaven and earth in the entire grotto heaven. He, who had already reached the limit of the longevity art, unknowingly began to draw upon the energy of heaven and earth again. Chen Hao did not notice this at all. In the blink of an eye, a month had passed. A strange fluctuation came from the grotto heaven. He, who was still immersed in cultivation and had forgotten about time and everything, was suddenly awakened by the strange fluctuation. It's only been a month? The chanting was interrupted. Chen Hao opened his eyes and looked at the great elder who had appeared in the grotto heaven with a little surprise. What's the matter? Good boy. However, the grand elder looked at the grotto heaven that he had spent so much effort to condense. He said, "In a month, you've absorbed as much energy as old man in half a month. How is this possible? Old man is at the creation stage. Is that so? I don't seem to have stabilized my cultivation stage." Chen Hao said in confusion as he sensed the energy contained in the nascent soul. It seemed that other than becoming a little more condensed, there was not much change. However, what surprised Chen Hao was that his physical body seemed to have become a lot stronger. He did not even need to use his true yuan to make Chen Hao feel an explosive power. Chen Hao was sure that with just the strength of his physical body, he could smash a 1,000-foot-thick mountain into powder with one punch. The grand elder looked at Chen Hao as if he was looking at a monster. After a full half a minute, he sighed helplessly and said, Forget it, forget it. Old man can't see through you no matter what. Let's go, I'll take you out." It had to be said that in the grand elder's senses, Chen Hao's cultivation stage aura was indeed not stable. He was not even at the early stage of the nascent soul stage. However, the energy that Chen Hao absorbed was real. Could it be that the energy could disappear in the powerful grotto heaven? This was something that could not be done. However, he really could not see where Chen Hao absorbed the energy. Part 1. Yesterday was very tragic. My classmate's son's 100-day celebration. Wu Shan had to write his story, so he did not go. He asked his wife to bring his daughter there. In the end, he received a call from his wife at around 7 o'clock. His daughter might have drunk too much fruit and had a stomachache. Wu Shan had no choice but to hurry over and bring his daughter to a small clinic. Even after taking the medicine, it was still painful. The medicine took a long time to take effect and they were far from home. With no other choice, Wu Shan could only use his true yuan to help warm his daughter's stomach. Finally, she did not cry out in pain. But Wu Shan could not stop. When he got home, his hands were emitting the smell of burnt leather. When I wrote the second chapter, I did not say that there was no third chapter. I was afraid that everyone would wait for too long, so I asked Sister Feng to help me send a separate chapter. Chapter 306. Star-Picking Peak Hall. When Chen Hao entered, Yuan Tai ran, the inner sect elders, and the disciples who were going to participate in the intersect competition had already gathered. The moment Chen Hao entered, everyone's eyes were locked on Chen Hao. Helian Wuxi and Tantai Lian were also among them. Chen Hao, you haven't stabilized your realm? Yuan Tairan asked in surprise when he saw Chen Hao. In his opinion, Chen Hao's realm should have stabilized in a month's time in the Grand Elder's Grotto Heaven. However, Chen Hao's nascent soul early-stage aura was obviously not perfect. Not yet. The inner force cultivation method I'm cultivating is a little low-level and has reached its limit. Chen Hao replied frankly after cupping his fists. You didn't cultivate the 7 Stars Sutra? Yuan Tairan asked with a frown when he heard Chen Hao's words. When Chen Hao stepped out of the 7 Stars Grotto Heaven, he told him that he had obtained the 7 Stars unique art. The 7 Stars Sutra was obviously an Earth-level unique art and was enough for him to use before the Incarnation Realm. No, Chen Hao said. This. Yuan Tairan frowned slightly. If you change your cultivation method now. Yuan Tairan glanced at Tantai Lian and then at Helian Wuxi. He hesitated but didn't say anything. Instead, he said, it should be too late. We can only do this for the time being. Although he said that on the surface, he secretly sent a voice transmission. It's not completely impossible. Tantai Lian is considered your cultivation partner, right? She has already cultivated the 7 Stars Sutra to the last level. If you dual cultivate with her, you will be able to comprehend it several times faster. Although you might not be able to comprehend it completely before the start of the competition, you will at least be much stronger than you are now. This? Forget it. Sect leader, although the 7 Stars Sutra is an Earth-level unique art, my situation is a little special. I'm afraid I won't be able to last until the nascent soul realm. Therefore, I want to cultivate a heaven-level unique art directly. It's best if it's a heaven-level unique art so that I won't have to switch. Chen Hao sent a voice transmission. Are you sure? A top-grade heaven-class inner force mantra was not a heaven-class consummate skill. Without sufficient origin energy to support it, you won't be able to bring out your full strength. Sovereign, don't worry. Chen Hao said straightforwardly. Strictly speaking, Chen Hao hadn't asked for anything from the star-seizing sect since he'd entered. Now that he was doing this, he naturally wanted to get an absolute art from the sect master. After all, with Chen Hao's current realm, it was extremely difficult for him to obtain a heaven-tier top ultimate skill. Even if one encountered a fortuitous encounter, it would be very difficult to obtain. After all, the so-called opportunity and luck were closely related to a cultivator's realm. Alright, since you're so sure, I'll teach you a heaven-tier secret technique that only elders of the star-picking sect can cultivate. However, during the intersect competition, you shouldn't change your cultivation for the time being. There's definitely not enough time. After the two of them finished their telepathic conversation, Yuan Xingyao gave a detailed account of the intersect competition to the 31 disciples. He also introduced the disciples present to Chen Hao individually. He didn't hide the importance he attached to Chen Hao in the slightest. Moreover, it was obvious that he had surpassed everyone present. Helian Wuxi and Tantai Lian naturally felt that this was very reasonable. Yi Feishue, who had a good relationship with Chen Hao, also didn't have any objections. After all, she had watched Chen Hao's rapid rise. Although most of the disciples were vaguely dissatisfied, it was only a little. After all, Chen Hao's name was now famous in the cultivation world. He was no less inferior to the top geniuses of 9th-rank sections. He wasn't someone they could compare to at all. However, Long Yukong, who was ranked first among the core disciples and had also reached the half-step nascent soul stage, looked at Chen Hao with hostility and disdain. He was just a disciple who had just entered the nascent soul stage. Long Yukong admitted that Chen Hao's potential was limitless, but he definitely didn't think that Chen Hao's current combat strength could compete with him. So what if he had killed the top geniuses of the 9th-rank sects of the Southern Sea Islands? No matter how outstanding those geniuses were, they were only at the golden core and nascent soul stages. How could they compare to him now? There's still a month before the intersect competition officially begins. However, in reality, the final selection will begin in 10 days. We'll set off in 3 days. I'll give you 3 days to prepare. If you have any needs, the Zhaixing sect will do our best to satisfy you. This includes spirit weapons and treasured clothing. However, we're only a third-rank sect after all. We can only satisfy you with superior-grade spirit weapons. Each person can only have one. We can't do anything more than that, and it's only for use. Whether you can obtain it or not will depend on your performance. All right. Go back and think carefully about what you need the most. Only you know best. Tomorrow morning, the second elder will bring you to the treasury to choose. All right, you're dismissed. Apart from Chen Hao, Helian Wuzi, and Tantai Lian, no one else was surprised by Yuan Tyron's words. Every disciple who was qualified to participate in the intersect competition would obtain the right to use a superior-grade spirit weapon. Whether they could obtain it in the end would depend on their performance in the intersect competition. But even so, it still made many disciples excited. Even Helian Wuzi and Tantai Lian were no exception. Superior-grade spirit weapons were not uncommon among Incarnation Realm experts. However, they were extremely rare for nascent soul disciples. Perhaps only the genius disciples of the 9th rank and 8th rank sects could possess such weapons. Of course, this referred to the sect's provision. Those obtained by one's own luck were an exception. Long Yukong's expression carried a hint of pride. He wasn't surprised at all. Clearly, this fellow already possessed a superior-grade spirit weapon. However, Chen Hao's expression didn't change at all. He looked as if he wasn't interested at all. That was indeed the case. Chen Hao had already obtained a set of doomsday armor. Although it was only a middle-grade armor, it was expensive because it contained the Dark Wind Calamity technique. However, the price of using the Dark Wind Calamity technique was too high. It wasn't an energy that Chen Hao could control at all. Once it was used, it would exhaust its energy. It was also because of this that Chen Hao didn't plan to use it again after using it once in the Dark Wind Ancient Cave. Now that he had stepped into the nascent soul realm, Chen Hao believed that he should be able to use it a few times in a full state. After all, he had already cultivated the Platinum Sky-Splitting Slash, which was comparable to the Dark Wind Calamity technique. Therefore, this doomsday armor was definitely stronger than any superior-grade spirit weapon. As for weapons, Chen Hao's 5-element sword was definitely stronger than a superior-grade spirit weapon after fusing with the 5 elements divine beasts. Let's go! Chen Hao suddenly released 2 streams of energy to pull Helian Wuzi and Tantai Lian. After saying that, he took the lead and soared into the sky. Helian Wuzi and Tantai Lian both glared at Chen Hao. Their expressions were obviously filled with dissatisfaction and anger. He didn't even look at them when they were fighting. How could they not have any opinions? In the hearts of the 2 women, Chen Hao didn't care about them at all. It seemed that other than cultivation, there was only cultivation in his heart. Including just now, when he arrived, he only glanced at the 2 women and didn't express or greet them in the slightest. However, the 2 of them also knew that they were imagining things too beautifully. Helian Wuzi had been separated from Chen Hao for 2 years. When they met again in the cultivation world, she had many fantasies. However, when she really met Chen Hao, she realized that all her fantasies were shattered. Chen Hao was still the same Chen Hao who only cared about cultivation. He was cold and domineering. There was only a slight change, but his essence didn't change at all. As for Tantai Lian, she was also imagining things that were far better than Helian Wuzi's. After all, in the 7 Stars Grotto Heaven, she had completely become Chen Hao's woman. However, after coming out, she saw a strong opponent, Helian Wuzi, and Chen Hao was no different from before. The 2 women watched Chen Hao fly away first and finally followed him. 10,000 Pills Pavilion. On a mountain peak, a handsome figure exuding a cold aura stood proudly on the peak. His eyes were like the stars in the night sky, but also like 2 terrifying sword lights, inadvertently exuding a destructive aura. It's been 5 months. I wonder if he has triggered heaven's punishment? If he steps into the nascent soul realm, then we can meet soon. If I use the destruction sword principle, he will definitely be more suspicious of my identity. However, it's just suspicion. Can't I just happen to comprehend the destruction sword principle? The figure that people didn't dare to approach stared at the distant starry sky and muttered. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly, and under the empty starry sky, he actually looked indescribably charming. However, when this kind of charm appeared on a young man, any normal man who saw it would feel their hair stand on end and have goosebumps all over their bodies. I've activated it again. I've advanced to the peak of the mastery nascent soul realm, and I've comprehended the attribute will of the destruction sword principle. Even if he steps into the nascent soul realm, he should only be in the early stage. I can definitely beat him now, the young man said with certainty again. However, just as he finished speaking, he frowned slightly. Then, a self-deprecating smile appeared on his face as he said, I seem to think so every time. What a freak! This young man was none other than Leng Yihan, whom Chen Hao thought was lustful. He was also a disciple of the 10,000 Pill Pavilion who had the qualifications to participate in the sect competition. Moreover, he was the strongest disciple. Ling Tian sect. On a mountain peak, in a palace that looked like a paradise, a figure appeared on the mountain peak as fast as lightning. This figure was actually Xia Lanlan. Sister Lanlan? Is there news? Xia Lanlan had just landed on the mountain peak when a voice that sounded like the sound of nature appeared by her ears. Then, a devastatingly beautiful figure appeared strangely beside Xia Lanlan. Her pure and beautiful eyes were filled with dense nervousness and anticipation as she stared at Xia Lanlan. Xia Lanlan's expression was rather speechless as she said, how do you look like an expert at the incarnation stage? Look at how nervous you are. I really don't understand what exactly does he have. When she spoke up to hear, Xia Lanlan didn't continue speaking. That person had saved her and Duan Yufei's lives twice and stepped into the cultivation world from the 100 Empire ranking. In a short 2 years, he had already grown to a stage that she had to look up to. Such a person seemed to really be worthy of Yu being so nervous. Perhaps only such a person could make Yu so nervous. Second update. The third update is a little late. I suggest everyone watch it tomorrow. Thank you. That you're tuning in to the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.